How long do I have to wait to get the majority vote?
Proof that they didn't want you to see.
Well, what we're trying to.
Come.
Someone like this.
Okay, that's why I suggested you give me a call.
With the audience ID.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I don't.
Okay. Right.
Yep. Full council.
It is now 5 o'clock, and today is October the 3rd, 2017. And I call to order the meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville. And the City Council sitting as the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the city as housing assets successor. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Gomez,
Good evening, everyone.
Councilmember Kennedy, Councilmember Negretti is absent from tonight's meeting. Mayor Pro Tem Cox,
Here.
Mayor Garcia.
Here. This is the time and place for the general public to address the City Council on any item listed or not listed on the agenda per Government Code Section 549-54-3. State law prohibits the council from addressing any issue not previously included on the agenda. The council may receive testimony and set the matter to a subsequent meeting. I don't see anyone that wants to address the council. Do we have any cards?
No, we do not.
We do not. May we have declaration of closed session items by our city attorney, please?
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. We have several items this evening, several of which are related. On the City Council agenda, we have items A, which is anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D2. Items B and C are existing litigation. They are related to items F, G, H, and I on the Airport Authority agenda. That is existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D1. And the case names and case numbers are set forth on the agenda. With respect to item A, the information related to that anticipated litigation is also set forth on the agenda. Item D and item J are related. Also existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D1, and that litigation is set forth on the agenda, as is the case name. And lastly, item E is anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D2, and again, the facts and circumstances pertaining to that are set forth on the agenda. To the extent there's a reportable action, we will report it at the conclusion of the closed session or immediately prior to the commencement of the 6 o'clock meeting.
Thank you. At this time, we will recess for our closed session, and our regular session convenes at 6 p.m. It is now 6 o'clock, October 3rd, 2017, and I call to order the meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville, and the City Council sitting as the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the city as housing asset successor. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Gomez.
Good evening, everyone.
Councilmember Kennedy. Here. Councilmember Negretti is absent from tonight's meeting. Mayor Pro Tem Cox.
Here.
Mayor Garcia.
Here. Due to the tragedy in Las Vegas and the people that lost their lives, those that were injured, and all those that were impacted by it, we have one of our city clerks whose family was injured. They will recover, but they were injured. There may be others that I may not know about, but I would like to have a moment of silence. So please join me. Thank you. Amen. At this time, may we have closed session announcements by our city attorney, please?
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. We had several items on the agenda. However, several of them were related. Item A on behalf of the City Council was anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D2, and the facts and circumstances related to that are set forth on the agenda. Item B and C on behalf of the City Council are related to items F, G, H, and I on behalf of the Airport Authority. That is pending litigation pursuant to Government Code 546.9D1. The case names and parties to, and case numbers and parties to the litigation are set forth on the agenda. Item D is related to item J on the Airport Authority agenda. Again, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1, and again, the case names and case numbers are set forth on the agenda. Item E is anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D2, and the facts and circumstances pertaining to that litigation are set forth on the agenda. At this time, there is no reportable action with respect to any of those items.
Thank you. At this time, we will have the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation will be delivered by Kyle Roach from High Desert Church, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Police Chief John Schuler. Please stand.
Hello, my name is Kyle Roche from High Desert Church. I just want to really quickly just say that our staff really appreciate what you guys do for our city, so thank you. But for now, let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day and just the grace that you give us, the breath in our lungs that you give us. God, I pray for these leaders in this room, and God, I pray for this meeting that it would be one that is efficient, one that you are glorified, and God, that you just give these leaders wisdom, God, that they'd be able to tackle the different problems and agendas that they have this evening, and God, I pray that they would continue to push our city forward. God, I pray that these citizens that are in this room as well, God, that their voice would be heard, God, and I pray just for a blessing on our city. I also want to lift up the city of Las Vegas, God, and the tragedy that has happened. God, I pray for the first responders and for the city officials there, that you give them wisdom to deal with such a tragedy, and for the families and friends of those who were victims. God, I pray that you would bless them and give them, just surround them with love and care from their local churches and from their local family. And God, I pray for even the people in this city who have been affected because of family members and friends, God, that they would feel not alone, but at peace because they have people around them that love them. So God, we give you this night, and we pray this all in your name. Amen.
Face the flag. Place your right hand over your heart. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, God, indivisible, with liberty.
This evening, we do not have any proclamations or special presentations. So can we have our city clerk present the agenda to the council and any revisions to the agenda, please?
Yes, Mayor Garcia. Persons who wish to address the council on a specific item or any item that does not appear on the agenda are requested to complete one of the white speaker cards located in the council chambers lobby and give it to the city clerk prior to the meeting. The mayor will call upon each individual who has submitted a speaker card. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3, state law prohibits the council from addressing any issue not previously included on the agenda. The council may receive testimony and set the matter to a subsequent meeting. Comments made during the written communications or public comment sections of the agenda are to be limited to 3 minutes per speaker or less as deemed necessary by the mayor. Communications are to be addressed directly to the city council. Individual comments to staff or members of the audience are not permitted. Any person or group who interferes with the conduct of a city council meeting by willfully interrupting and or disrupting the meeting is subject to removal. A peace officer may be requested to assist with the removal should any person or group fail to comply with an order of removal by the council. Any person or group who resists removal by a peace officer is subject to arrest and prosecution pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.9, Penal Code Section 403. All documents to be considered for approval at this meeting are before the City Council, and there are no revisions for tonight's agenda.
Thank you. We do not have any appeal hearings. Therefore, we move on to public hearings. And the first one is B1, revising and consolidating the existing City Council procedural rules into a comprehensive manual of City Council policies and procedures and adoption of a City Council Policy and Procedures Manual. Madam Clerk, please read the recommendation.
The recommendation is that the City Council open the public hearing, take testimony, close the public hearing, introduce ordinance number 2367 for adoption and first reading by title only, and waive further reading in full, provide any comments on the draft Council Policy and Procedures Manual, and adopt resolution number 17-056.
Thank you. At this time, I open the public hearing.
Well, I needed to say that as a council member, I have the right for municipal code to have that ordinance be read in full. I had this discussion with Andre so that we didn't bicker back and forth. So I'm hoping that we don't have to bicker back and forth, and I'm following the municipal code as I speak at this moment. So that's what I'm requesting.
Requesting it before it's adopted or now?
Instead of having the waiver, I would like for the
I would
full
like to continue,
hearing to
please.
continue to be
I will
read fully.
continue. At this time, I
That's my
open the
right.
public hearing. I will
And you
take
understand we're
testimony.
violation of
Public?
municipal code, right? When she
Actually,
continues speaking.
there is no motion at this point on the table. There needs to be a motion before we waiver it.
We
further
don't need to
reading.
have a motion on a municipal code. You don't
Oh,
need
actually,
municipal code
you do
motions
have to
be
have a motion
granted.
for consideration. Right now, the public hearing's being opened to get comments from the public.
That's the same thing I did with the cannabis ordinance. There was absolutely no motion. No one would back it up. So I don't understand what the difference is. We're adopting a policy manual that will strip
There
this
has
right
been no-
that we have.
There has been no indication that it's going to be adopted at this point. That's the whole purpose of having a
So
public
it's going to
hearing.
be read, right?
It absolutely can be read when a motion is made. If there's a motion to adopt it, it should be, if you want, it can be read in full, absolutely.
Okay, like I said, when I had the cannabis motion,
I'm
there was
sorry,
no
you're
cannabis
completely out
motion,
of order,
as a
and I would
fact.
like to continue.
What I did is I went ahead, I asked for it to be read, and it was
5-minute
read.
recess.
This is what we expect when we're trying to follow municipal code, so there's nothing different. Did we need a motion for her to recess? That's not municipal code. I want the same thing to be asked.
No, we should have a motion to recess if
Why
that's
do I
the
have to
decision.
tell them to do that?
Right now, we are opening the public hearing. It would be appropriate to take public comment. After that, to have either a staff report, and at that time, if a motion is made to adopt either the resolution or the ordinance, that'd be the appropriate time to ask the clerk to read it in full.
Thank you for that.
Okay, I will continue.
So you've opened the public hearing. Are there any cards?
I open the public hearing and take testimony from the public. I don't believe I have any cards.
There is one card, Mayor Garcia.
I have one card, Clayton Moore.
Yeah, good evening. Regarding the proposed manual, I read online what you posted there, 59 pages of procedures. And some of them seem I don't know how recent some of them are that you developed or how much of it you're updating or changing. But without really knowing what's in it, it's hard to discuss what you're going to do about it. There seems like there's other issues that are more urgently pending than revising your manual to the degree that it looks like you are. Maybe you could explain how much of that is new and how much of it is simply being edited or modified. That's the question I had about it. It seems like the 5-minute limit on council members' comments seems like an arbitrary thing. It seems like it shouldn't be necessary to put limits on the content of your meeting. That's the thing that stood out to me as a thing that I have questions about. So maybe you could expand on that in your discussion about it. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I close the public hearing. Maggie Martin?
that, not doing that. Thank you. Unfortunately, I didn't get an opportunity to read it online. My little cell phone wasn't cooperating with me. But I know the gist of it, which is a time limit on council members' comments. We do have a council member here that likes to go on at length, ad nauseum, infinitum, et cetera, and I'm definitely in favor of not being subjected to what I deem, in my personal opinion, is unnecessary minutia. So I am definitely in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more cards? No? Okay. I close the public hearing, and now we have council members' comments.
I have questions. Whoever's starting.
Are we starting the public hearing? Because I know we had to wait for the city clerk, so we had this read before council comments came about.
This is council members' comments or questions.
Andre?
Yes, this is appropriate time for council member comments, staff report, questions, and then entertain a motion, at which time, if you want the ordinance read, it'd be absolutely appropriate to have it read.
Yes, so before I go on, I would like that to be read in full, and then I have a lot of questions, just like some of the people that came up here. What is new, what is not new? So, I mean, before that, if we could have that read, if you don't mind, then maybe I would take my time and I would read it myself, if that's going to be an issue.
I don't, if I might, I think the attorney just said, now's the time for council comments and questions, staff reports, questions of staff, and then, when there's a motion, is the time for the request to be read, not now. Correct?
That's correct.
That is correct.
Well, I'm going to listen to the advice of the attorney.
Go ahead, Jim.
In regard to, in regard to the question, it'll be answered by someone else, but for those who are wondering what is new and what's being struck through, every page states black line comparisons of proposed changes to the Victorville Municipal Code, Chapter 2.20, insertions shown in underlined text, deletions shown in strike-through text. You read it, you now understand what's to be added, what's to be deleted. On section 2.20070, I have a question, is that established resolutions and rules, if there's not a requirement that these be posted at the entrance of wherever we're meeting, I didn't find it, and it should be. It's established by resolution and procedures consistent with the Ralph M. Brown Act, but it seems like to me that every individual entering this chamber should have the opportunity to read the rules once they're adopted, and therefore required posting at the entrance. Is that appropriate or not?
That would be appropriate, or at least to make them available, yes.
Or make them available on request. Either one, and I ask the council, I'm not going to ask for a proposal yet. If we move to item 2, council election and governance. Council members are elected in the general election in November of even-numbered years. The mayor and mayor pro tem will be appointed by majority vote of a quorum. I'm personally opposed to that because a quorum is 3 people. And so at any time that we have only 3 people attending and 2 people want to change the mayor, it could be done so. The mayor is required to carry out the wishes of the whole council. The only way that the mayor can do that, or be required to do that, is to be appointed by the majority vote of the whole council.
We just have our, you can't vote.
We could add that language just to change or insert the word entire.
It is my suggestion to the council members that we make that. On the role of duties of all council members.
This is the posting of copy.
Is that accomplished by making it
No. What happens is that
okay.
if you want to change
I
the
don't have
mayor
that
or
handy
appoint
here.
the mayor, anytime there's only 3 people here and 2 want to do it, they can do it.
Yeah.
The mayor is therefore not beholden to the whole council. The mayor's role cannot be representing their individual opinion. It has to be the opinion of the whole council. You can't do that if the whole council doesn't have a voice in who's to be the mayor. So on chapter 2, page 4, reading the last sentence of that first paragraph, it says that questions should be resolved by the staff. The reason is that each public meeting it'll shorten the meetings. It will, but I think the whole purpose of having questions answered by staff is to enhance the understanding and clarifying the agenda. And shorten the time that it takes to get through the official business. Council member appointees and assignments, subsection B, same page. Again, it says, in accordance with the provisions of Resolution 13-049, individual council members nominate and the city council confirms by majority vote. I would like that to be a majority vote of the whole council. Again, you can
Excuse
have a
me, they have a conversation going on over here and it's interrupting. I'm sorry.
And you can have 3 people in attendance and 2 people decide to change all the makeups of the committee meetings. Again, when an individual goes to another entity to represent the city, they must represent the city's position, not an individual position. And you can't guarantee that if you change the position based upon 2 members of the council. I'd like that changed. That would be my request by a majority vote of the whole council. The page 8 of the draft, subsection B under regular meetings, limitation of new business. I'm reading, no new items of business of the council shall be considered after 10 p.m. unless a majority vote of the council. I would suggest that I'm having a problem because no new business may be undertaken any time if it's not on the agenda. So wouldn't it be that agendized items may not be considered after 10 p.m.?
To make that change if the council decides to proceed, yes.
Because no new items, if it's not agendized, can be undertaken any time by the council. That's my understanding.
Correct.
At that point in time, I have no further suggestions. Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, I have a couple things I wanted to deal with. And draft, I'm looking at the actual final. It's on page 2, chapter 2, page 2, paragraph council election. I would like to see us go to a mayor's term of 1 year rather than 2, and that that election be done in December of every year. Not suggesting that we even rotate. I'm just suggesting and the mayor pro tem. The other thing I'd like to suggest is that in the travel section, in the reimbursement for travel on page 35, section on international and travel and state and travel arrangements, I would like to add some language to that whole section that says we will pay the lowest reasonable. Into a fair number of meetings. Well, I don't, but others do, that are one-day meetings in Sacramento. Fly up in the morning, fly back at night. You got airfare. There's no reason to have a hotel room the night before, hotel room the night after. The lowest reasonable.
Correct.
Those are the only 2 things I'd like to see. Do we need to vote on those kind of suggestions?
Well, you could include those as part of your motion if we get to that point.
Okay. I wouldn't want it to get defeated on the 1-year mayor term, by the way. Do we have an agreement on that, or?
Well, can't you address each item before there's a motion to approve with conditions? Wouldn't we undertake all the conditions once we know what they might be? City clerk keeping track of these?
I'm trying.
Okay.
Mine was just lowest reasonable.
I got yours.
The only thing that I suggest is the 1-year term for the mayor. Many times different organizations would like to have the mayors come back the following year. And if you're just serving one term, it makes it a little difficult for them to plan the year ahead. But that's just, it doesn't matter one way or the other, truthfully. That it seems like 2 years is a more convenient term.
I'm a little troubled because, as I told Andre earlier on, we do not have the original Municipal Code 2.20 embedded here. We have the draft of something modified from the 2.20. So I asked Andre, why didn't we put the initial one and then continue with the draft? So anyone that would like to look at his origin or the foundation can see some of those changes, even with the strike-throughs. And a lot of the line-throughs does not make it evident what it is that is happening. It's kind of trying to get into the minds of the people that did the line-throughs and what it is that's happening there that you can understand. I read it line by line, and that was my perception of something that's not quite understandable as what it is that is happening. But I did catch that the original municipal code is not embedded there.
If I could answer that, the proposed ordinance 2367 is basically a rewrite of the existing provisions of 220 of your municipal code. You do have a copy of the existing 220 attached to this that has the lines through it that shows what pieces have been deleted from it, and the pieces that remain are now shown up in ordinance number 2367. With respect to the policy manual has basically incorporated a number of those items that were deleted, several of which are inconsistent now with state law and basically are rely on a code that was drafted, maybe 30 years ago. In addition, the city over the years has adopted numerous other policies by resolution. What we have tried to do is basically incorporate most of those policies into this proposed manual. So what the manual reflects is basically, I would say, 90% of what is on the books today, either in the form of your existing municipal code or in the form of adopted council policies. There's probably about 10% changes in here to modify it, primarily to make it consistent with new state law and to make it consistent with the requirements, for example, of the FPPC, and the fact that we now have adopted Rosenberg's Rules of Order. So while it seems like it's a pretty extensive document, again, there aren't terribly many changes from what's already on the books in terms of existing policy. And again, with respect to the ordinance, you do have Section 220 set forth. If you read through it, you can actually read through the black lining and see what's there. You'll find that the remainder language is now incorporated into the new ordinance. So that's the purpose of it.
So like I was saying, the original one is not there. I do see the reflections of the original being altered as a draft. And that was one of the examples where it only takes one council member to have the ordinance read, and when I didn't see it there again at the beginning as something drafted, then I knew it was not the original.
You will find that language is in the part that's, I think, being deleted, and you're right. The reason
Yes.
it is being deleted is because state law does not have that same requirement. That's why we try to make these policy manuals and this ordinance more consistent with the current state law. And the California Government Code does not require that any one individual require the reading of an ordinance. It is in the municipal code today, granted, but the rest of the state of California does not follow that rule. So we're trying to make this rule consistent with what most cities do in California.
It just made it seem to me that we had presiding officers trying to revamp a policy that would circumvent a municipal code. And so when that was my understanding and we didn't explain something of this nature when it was first brought up, it made it seem like we were going off pattern. So I would bring back to what it is of my understanding of what we're doing today.
The direction given to me was to try and get a policy manual put together that was reflective of your existing code and make those updates and revisions that made it more consistent with current state law. So over the period of time when this was first considered, there have been some, not significant, there have been some additional minor modifications. That was one of them that basically changed from the prior drafts that was circulated back in, I forget when it was, March or May or something, I think it was. So it has been a work in progress getting to a point today where we believe this is, one, consistent with most of your adopted policies and consistent with the provisions of the municipal law. They've just been moved into this and have been updated to make them reflective of California law.
Okay, so before I begin, I would like to know how staff will be taking notes on the proposed discussions, the requests, the suggestions, and so forth for this document. And is there going to be a list, and is there going to be a list that is going to be taken down by staff and then brought up to a formal vote from everyone? And how will we decide what suggestions and requests come to the forefront and which ones don't?
Yes, we are taking notes of the proposed proposals from Mr. Kennedy to date, Mr. Cox to date, and Ms. Gomez. I would assume that at some point we are going to have, if the council so desires, a motion to adopt it with certain revisions to those specific provisions, if that's the desire of this council.
So there's going to be a formal vote, right? And
Correct.
It's going to be spelled out as what is embedded and what is not embedded. The other thing is, I would like to take this opportunity to let you guys know that there's going to be a special election for the municipal code. No, there's not. So everyone that's here, if you didn't have a say, this is it, pretty much. So I'm a little concerned because I would have loved to have workshops, just like we're going to do a lot of workshops on our taxes and how our taxes is going to be raised. The same thing for something of this nature, because this doesn't only affect council members, city staff, but it also affects how city business will be conducted from now on. So, I mean, we did that with Measure X and saw how the voters had the prime opportunity to decide for themselves if they deemed it possible to change the municipal code. So, Andre and staff and the audience or the council members, if they have any feedback, any thoughts, comments, or objections or ideas, that's probably something I would like to hear. However, I don't want to relinquish the floor because there's a lot of parliamentary procedure that they could just cut me off. So how are public hearings on the municipal code change governed by California Code and municipal code, since council will cast a vote to change things by a resolution rather than by changing the municipal code through a voter initiative or a special election? So that my question is for Andre.
The only real difference is that either way it takes a majority vote of the council. An ordinance is far more cumbersome in terms of procedures because it takes a first reading, it takes a second reading, and it often takes a public hearing. It also requires more expense by the city because it has to publish notice, therefore. So the thought is, which most cities do, is to adopt these types of policies that have to change every couple of years based on what state law does, to put them into the form of a resolution. Again, you at this opportunity to have that ability to make that decision with respect to an amendment to the municipal code. If the council decides not to do that, we can live with the existing municipal code. However, I will tell you there are provisions in it that are, again, inconsistent with state law.
Okay, and how is it that on this municipal code change, a hearing such as right now is being rendered, and for redistricting, a voter initiation was done, but not today?
That was purely a decision of the council to put the ballot measure onto to let the voters of the city decide that. Municipal codes are continually being revised and modified by the city council, just as the development code is with respect to zoning ordinances. Every time that happens, we have to go through basically the same type of amendment as this to an amendment of your municipal code. It is, again, more cumbersome, more costly to do it that way. We're trying to simplify it. Again, at this point, you are actually, if you adopt this, at one point modifying the municipal code and making it easier in order for the council to adopt policies in the future.
And just as a matter of information, the redistricting proposal, or lack thereof, that was sent to the voters was actually done because it required a charter change, not a municipal code change. And charter change is because the public adopted the charter. The public is the only one who could make that change. So that's why that issue went to the voters.
Section 2.20.050 is titled Special Meetings. How else besides by council resolutions are being called, and are they going to be conducted? Why use a resolution? Is that the only form?
What section are you looking at?
2.20.050 titled Special Meetings. So I'm assuming that the mayor can call up a special meeting, one. The other way that it can be done is probably by you, maybe a majority of the council, so I'm asking for that.
Yeah, again, all special meetings have to be done in accordance with the provisions of the California Brown Act In addition, we are providing that they can be called in accordance with the procedures and a resolution of the City Council. So it all has to be done in compliance with the Brown Act.
So it's and or is it just and when you said that?
It must be in accordance with the requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act.
So all of us can't just say arbitrarily we're going to have a 24-hour meeting so-and-so and we voted on it because that would not allow for the Brown Act to occur in occurrence, right?
Typically, a special meeting is called when either there's an emergency issue that the city manager deems required, or the city attorney requires council direction on something because of a short lack of time within which to respond, an emergency, or a majority vote of this council.
Okay. For the benefit of the public, what types of talks would exclude the general public from a council quorum closed session meeting?
There are several categories of closed session meetings. Primarily the ones that we typically hold are when it goes or pertains to real estate negotiations or with respect to litigation, be it pending litigation, existing litigation, anticipated litigation. However, there are a number of other abilities, again, governed by the California Brown Act, under which we can go into closed session, such as discussion of personnel matters, emergency issues. There's a whole listing in the Brown Act.
Okay. Before I begin, I do those listening. There's recommendations. The city attorney and the city managers have access right now to a proposed ordinance resolution and an old regulation with the drafted manual. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I understand your
So
question.
before I begin, to those that are listening by the recommendations, so what I'm really saying is, I'm the boss. We as a council member are the boss only to two people. It's our city manager and it's our city attorney. So I'm trying to get your guys' ears to see what it is that we're saying or I'm beginning to say. So when I begin to talk about the resolutions, looking at old, new, and request, I'm hoping that the ears are primarily yours because you guys give direction to the rest of the staff. We don't as city council members. So I was trying to catch your attention.
Actually, the city council makes all of the policy and directs staff through the city manager and or me.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
City council is responsible for making all of the policy, and the policy is to be implemented primarily by the city manager and his staff, and I am also directed by the city council.
Right, which includes I'm a city council member.
And
I'm not saying that I'm going to do it alone. I'm just saying.
Correct. I respond
to know
to
that.
the direction of a majority of the council, as does the city manager.
So now I'm going to go to section 2.20.070. Not going to read it to you guys, so hopefully you guys have a synopsis of what it is. If it's up to council, then there must be a full board agreement, not just the majority's vote. If we conduct a meeting and we're left with 4 of the bands together, that's issued in minority. So I'm thinking, okay, we have a majority vote. We have minority speakers wanting to speak during something that's happening. Is there any way that we can use this paragraph to make it possible that we start working as a team? Because if you do not notice, a lot of what happens here is a 4-to-1 vote. So when we make it and call it a majority, my definition or understanding of a majority means 4 council members will vote, but the other one is left out. And I think this particular item, what it does, it continues to empower the 4 people that are up here. So, but with that said, I also did hear one of the council members saying the majority vote would mean everyone. So what is it there?
Typically, there are requirements for a majority vote of the entire council on certain issues. There is the ability to vote on a majority of a quorum on certain other issues. Any resolutions or ordinances for the payment of money, for example, require a majority vote of the entire council, but under certain different rules, a majority of the quorum, meaning if there were just 3 of you, 2 people could vote on certain items.
So for this,
established by state law.
For this one, it didn't say the majority of a quorum, so I'm going to assume that it's implicit that it's the majority of all council members.
No, this could be a majority of the quorum unless it specifically mentions, as Mr. Cox has indicated, that it would be a majority of the entire council.
Okay, so for this, I would modify this to include that all members of the council must agree before any council resolution is passed, not the quorum, but the majority. I don't know if we're saying the same thing.
You're asking for a unanimous vote of the entire council.
So what's the difference between what you just said with Mayor Pro Tem Cox asking for the majority, not quorum, not unanimous?
He is asking for a majority of the entire council, i.e. a majority of the 5 council members. That means 3 votes would be required to pass what he is referring to.
That's quorum.
Oh, a quorum is the number of people required to have a meeting. And a 5-member council,
I'm just saying because if we're 5 and we're here, I know 3 is quorum.
Correct. 3 can be a quorum, 5 can be a quorum.
Okay, well, again, I've seen the 4-to-1 a lot happen, and it's not on making a vote, it's on something that we continue to decide. So if we continue to see this, I don't see any time of teamship. You know, I can try all I want, but when we started put in manual, and the manuals requires these quorums, a majority, then you're leaving me out as a minority voice. But anyways, we know currently the current makeup is this, so I guess we'll deal with it, but that was my modification. Another phrase here is the powers and duties of the presiding officers. If there is a resolution passed as it was with the ceremonial recognition, there must be a way where the city is still represented without being exclusive to what one presiding officer's believes should be done. The city of Victorville had a recent issue not too long ago where the presiding officer could not be in 2 places in one to recognize a very important right by a large Victorville family. The family had to postpone their celebration an hour and then another hour and a half because there was no designee. I find these types of occurrences as avoidable when there should be clarity that there are 5 of us that are available, and we can realize that a council policy where one would say, well, I'm the only one that's going to go, or the other one's going to go, but then there's a third option. Why can't we have a third option? I'm not saying I want to represent on every event. I'm just saying if the mayor can't be there, if Mayor Pro Tem can't be there, can we have a number where the 3rd, 4th, or 5th person can be there if there's that capacity? I found it very unfair for this family, and I saw their frustration, and I apologize on behalf of the council, and I think it's not for us to invest ourselves. We need to start looking out for the general public, and I think all of us represent the city of Victorville, not just the mayor, not just Mayor Pro Temp. We all do. So that's one of my concerns with the current policy that we set for ceremony of recognitions. So the thing that would solidify that is appoint a 3rd person, 3rd place. If you want Negrete to be 3rd and then Kennedy to be 4th and I to be 5th, it's not a problem. But I want the city, if we are available, to be represented. This reminds me of patterns that are very similar to how our city is operating and why we now find ourselves in potential litigation with BBWA. If City Council and the City of Victorville continues with the same hierarchical thoughts that one is better than the other, then we've lost what it means to democratically assist the people of Victorville. So I'm going to continue with Ordinance 2367, which all of you should have. It needs to be clear and spelled out what consequences will be received and what is considered disorderly conduct, because to my awareness, this council has been disrespectful to the audience, disrespectful to one another, and there have been no consequences either way. I do not see how a clapping of hands is considered a disrespectful gesture, for one clapping for a proclamation may not be. We need to be clear instead of confusing one another. Also, to reject a person who willfully disrupts his proceedings is for all the legislative body, not just one to be singled out, and this should be also spelled out and defined, not just because a member cannot get along with another. So in these 2 sections, what I'm really asking is for us, if we need to spell out what disrespect is to one and not to the other and make some clarification, I think that should be viable. A lot of times up here, we've been very disrespectful to our audience. We've had people taken by Mr. Schuler when there was no need to do that. And I think that's where we need to call ourselves as a council and start checking ourselves as well, because we can be disrespectful not just to one another, but to the general community. Section B of this says, I'm asking, will copies of the rules and the procedures that govern the conduct of the city council meetings will be available every meeting next to the agenda outside where the white speakers cards are at? Are we going to do that? Have it outside so everyone has access? Not everybody has the time or makes the time to email Carol Lee, myself, and say, hey, can you provide this? I think that would be something essential. Having a copy out. I'm still in the same section. Ordinance 2367, Section B. And I'm asking for those copies to be outside so people could at their leisure pick them up during the meeting. Now I'm going to move on to 2.20.07, Section B. There's a strikeout of all the sentences after the first line. This council policy is for rules and regulations that are concerning to council. If there is a desire to do a manual for the public, shouldn't we make this separate? I think we're combining everything in one manual, and if we want one to be council policy and another one to be directed to the public, I think that's what it should be done. That's what should be. We should separate them instead of combining them together. And what are the pros and the cons of having an updated session or a modification from time to time by a council resolution? So that's a question that I have. So if city manager or the attorney can respond, pros and cons of having this resolution.
I thought I previously answered that question. The benefits of doing this by resolution is, for example, you've even suggested some changes. It's far easier for the city council in the future to consider the changes that you're requesting by doing it through a resolution, as opposed to going through the very cumbersome requirements of changing the municipal code. So your question itself sort of answered your own question.
I'm sorry, Andre, that you had to speak to me that way. It felt very demeaning. I don't understand the process of what you say. We understand things very differently. You might have repeated, and I understand that. But I also took some time to ask specific questions because although you say this is something, like I couldn't even repeat what you just told me, to be honest with you.
I apologize if you thought it was disrespectful. I'm just telling you that I previously had indicated the benefits of doing this by resolution as opposed to doing it by ordinance.
So what I gather there, that means that a resolution means that the council just randomly can be like, you know what, this is our new policy and vote on it, versus having a public hearing. Having it where we have the people come here is different. Isn't that the case?
That's the reason we're having a public hearing on this issue right now. Absolutely.
But we won't
give
have
the
it
public,
in the future if we do adopt the resolution.
If the council wants to go that way, that's certainly an option. If they don't want to go that way, they can keep doing it by adopting and tinkering with the municipal code.
I'm going to go on to section 2.20.070, section C. I propose that there be a one-time period during the year that if council deems it as a whole body to update or modify, that it be done during that open time session and not leisurely as it has been done so in the last couple of months. So when I asked the question of the resolution, it was my understanding that anybody that gets upset at someone else and wants to create a certain motive or doesn't have a motive, what they would do is say, I want to put this on the agenda. They already have their casted votes. They vote on it. And I think that is really disruptive of city business itself, because instead of helping the community, we're focused on each other and what it is that we can stymie our way of being more productive to our community at large. So that's something that I propose. So not just have it leisurely, have an open time window, October, 30 days between the 1st and the 30th, where if we're that concerned, we will use that time period every year to make sure that policy comes into play.
We do have a provision in here suggesting that you do have a review every 2 years of the policy manual, so we could change that to 1 year if the council so desires.
My understanding of that was if we decided tomorrow to do a policy unanimously, we could do it. The review of the actual handbook means, okay, is there anything we would like to change? Yes, no. But we can still do it tomorrow. We can still do it in 2 months. We can still do it in 3 months. We can still do it in 4 months. So that's why I was concerned. If that's embedded in the 2 year and we're not going to do policies left and right, watching who's doing what to stymie a progressive way of representing the community, and that's the 2 year mark, then that's fine. But that's not how I understood it, and that's not how I interpreted that particular reading of it. And now it's judicial review 2.20.080 for the benefit of the public and for the ease of understanding this section. What does this paragraph refer to, and why would there be a need for a judicial review?
This is basically a requirement by state law that indicates that if you're having an adjudicatory or quasi-judicial hearing, that typically, once a decision is made by this council, there are limitations in state law as to the appeal time. It's typically about 90 days.
Does that have anything to do with Chapter 10 censuring?
No.
I'm going on to 2.20.090. It's titled Ordinances, Resolutions, and Contracts, Section A. For clarification, no staff may or can prepare ordinances. Is that so?
Ordinances under California law to be prepared or at least reviewed by the city attorney.
So it's my understanding that sometimes staff does work on ordinances, so I want to make sure it's clear, because the next...
That's why the language requires either my preparation or review. If staff does it, I have to review it.
If there is an ordinance prepared and or reviewed by the attorney, it will be because the city manager, the attorney, yourself, or the majority council asked for that, right?
That's typically how it works, yes.
So then, if I see if I see an ordinance come to my desk, I cannot assume, and it will not implicit that any staff member in the city of Victorville prepared it. I will be under the complete assumption that the city attorney prepared that ordinance. Is that the case?
No, I just indicated that the city staff can prepare it as long as I review it. The requirement is that I either prepare it or review it. And any ordinance is going to have to be adopted by a vote of the council. We can't adopt ordinances or resolutions for that matter.
Well, the language there, as I interpret it, meant that. That's why I'm sure I asked twice and probably 3 times, because that's not how I understood it. These 2 sentences say 2 different opposing things. If all preparation of ordinances are solely by the attorney, then staff cannot prepare them for a draft. Only presentation of ordinances may be done unless one of the 3 listed entities say so, but you have said that that is not the case. How have ordinances been dealt with in the past, and does staff ever have a say in the preparations? You said yes, right?
Correct.
Okay. Section B. I'm confused by the function and the intent of the following.
There are several Bs. What's section B?
Section B? Well, that's where it have been approved as to form and legality by...
Are you in the ordinance, the resolution, or the policy manual?
Yeah, I haven't changed. I'm not in the policy manual yet. So if I was section 2.20.07, section C, then I went to judicial review, 2.20.080, then I went to 0.090A, so this would have to fall under 2.20.090B. So there's a small phraseology there, which I don't know the intent, but it says, which I cut it short, it says, have been approved as to form and legality by. Of course, again, the way I understood that is, what is it supposed to be read? Is it a typo? To form what? Are we forming anything?
You're under 2.20090B?
Yes. It's, I think, the second sentence. I didn't start it from the beginning. It was just
basically that it requires that before it's presented that it needs to be reviewed by the city attorney's office. We always typically review anything that's on the agenda when it comes to ordinances.
Okay, so when it says have been approved as to form, you're not forming anything. Nothing's missing there. We're talking about an actual application of some sort or a document.
Approved as to form means we have looked at the form of the document
Okay.
and believe that the form is consistent with state law.
All right, got it. So will the process of all ordinance now be one? Oh, we already discussed that. You made that clear. So I'm not going to ask that question again. Section 4, it's titled effective date. Says 30 days 30 days after. What is the actual date of the final passage? In other words, how many more hearings, how many consent calendars will we put this, how many more readings and so forth must occur procedurally and specifically?
If the council decides to make a motion to adopt this ordinance this evening, then it will be presented back to the council for second reading, as are all ordinances. Typically, that's done as a consent calendar item, and then it becomes effective 30 days after that second reading.
There's clauses there that say this would be in effect immediately as soon as council adopts it. So that's why I'm asking for clarification, because I thought
No, the policy manual and the resolution is adopted immediately. However, to the extent there are provisions in the municipal code Those will remain in effect until 30 days after the second reading.
So the manual is in effect immediately. The ordinance takes 30 days.
Portions of the manual that are not in conflict with the municipal code can be acted on immediately if you adopt the resolution as well as the ordinance.
So we're going to show that delineation, what does and what doesn't conflict, so that we know after we sign this that there's certain things that didn't go through because they conflict with municipal code. Because I know we're going to have to sign this and say that we actually read it and we went through it.
That's why we have included a black-line version that shows all of the changes to the ordinance.
So now I'm going to go forward to resolution number 17-056. For the benefit of discussion, how are the resolutions advantageous to the majority? So please do not think that I'm asking the same question, because it is not. To a majority versus a municipal code, and how do these two vary in power for a majority of the council? So notice that I'm seeking a response, which I've seen consistently off and on. If you want, I can repeat the same question again.
That would be helpful.
Okay. So for the benefit of a discussion, how are resolutions advantageous to a majority versus the usage of a municipal code, and how do those two vary in power for the majority of the council?
Again, every decision, be it resolution, be it municipal code, be it ordinance, requires a majority vote of this council. All of the business of this council occurs on a majority vote. The difference between a resolution and an ordinance is, again, primarily a resolution is a little simpler to adopt. It's easier to make changes to ensure that your codes are consistent with state law. The municipal code is basically a law that's incorporated into the city's municipal code. It is far harder to change, takes a lot more procedural steps, is more cumbersome, more expensive.
Okay, so does that mean that today, since we have that public hearing and we have a municipal code, that means it's costing us a lot of money? Because we're not doing it through resolution right now.
Yes, what we are trying to do is actually revise both the municipal code and adopt a policy manual so that we don't get challenged on an existing municipal code that has a lot of inconsistencies with state law. We're actually trying to save the taxpayers money here by putting everything into a comprehensive document so that we eliminate consistencies in the provisions of the existing municipal code.
You know, the reason why I've been able to be outspoken is because of the municipal code. It's allowed the minority voice to be able to say something. But when we have the resolution and we have a majority, that quickly shuts someone up. Anyways, you don't have to answer that. In order for a statement to be made that that ordinance number 2367, along with the resolution number 17-056, it implies that there has probably been extensive discussion, whereas this has not been the case. This was an abrupt, seemingly, this is my opinion, retaliatory response to a newly elected official that unseated a loyal friend to the rest of this council. It is in the best benefit to the city and to the public to have a series of sessions where they are included and not excluded from participating in a decision that will not only affect the public, but also the overall city. So there is where you can see my sentiment, where two of these things come together, where it makes it easy for a majority to be able to do as they please and continues a status quo of what has been done over the last couple of decades. Now moving on to chapter 2.20, which is City Council document 2.20.050 special meetings. I don't see how this section is esoteric or outdated. It still holds validity today and should continue to be a part of the language as it always has. What was the purpose and intent for striking this off of the municipal code? And the same thoughts go on the following sections. The sections are 2.20.110. It's titled Unfinished Business. The same sentiment is for 2.20.130, which is titled Reading of the Minutes, and 2.20.140, Presiding Officer, and 2.20.270, Changing Votes. All of these are valid, and I'm not sure what was the intent and the purpose of bringing them out. There's nothing outdated about them. There's nothing esoteric. So what is the sentiment between changing this and why did we do that?
Again, these are issues that are either incorporated into the new ordinance or into the policy manual. We're not making significant changes. It's just to put them all into a document where the public can find them easily, can access them easily, as can the council members. This is
Andre.
to help facilitate your meetings.
Andre, if you would have put that as part of this, I wouldn't be asking those questions.
That's what our staff report indicates.
I don't understand why these have to be struck. I don't see anything wrong with them. And you give me very good responses, but I have no idea why we take things that continue to work for the city of Victorville.
Let me give you
But
an
I do see you're saying you're taking them out from the municipal code and putting them in a handbook. I do see that. But I don't understand. Wipe them out and then put them to replace what? We're not even replacing them with the same idea. It's not even the same thing. So I'm wondering why take it out? What was the problem and the issues with these sections?
As I've previously indicated, several of these sections are now inconsistent with state law. Section 22050 is a long-winded reference when now under the new 220050, again, the same section, we have simplified it, made it consistent with state law, and indicates that special meetings will be conducted in accordance with the Brown Act.
Okay, well, if you can provide along with those sections, the government codes, I would like to verify and review them myself as well. Thank you for that. So now I'm going to move on to section 2.20.080. It's under council correspondence, section 8. Same thing. I find this information valid and no need to strike it either. And I mean, our city manager has authority to all of our correspondence, and he's able to see every single piece of letter that any and all council member gets. So I don't understand why that is outdated. If there's California law that states that their city manager cannot look at council members' correspondence, I would also like to see that if that's the response that you might be giving me.
You're now in the policy manual.
I'm on section 2.20.080, correspondence section 8. The policy manual, from my understanding, is chapters 1 through 10. I haven't started that. Well, like I summarized, it's basically the city manager has authority to look at council members' correspondence and reply if he needs to. If not, I mean, I didn't see that as invalid. I don't know if there's California law that there's a bill passed where he can't see that information. Is that the case?
No, again, this is a proposed policy for the council's consideration. If it's something the majority of the council wants to do, then they can adopt it. If they don't adopt it.
All right. And is the sergeant at arms only to keep order through a verbal cue from the presiding officer? And is that sergeant at arms also able to carry the responsibility of maintaining a general council order?
That is always up to the presiding officer of any meeting in California. And it's typically the sergeant at arms helps the presiding officer ensure conduct of the meeting, both at the council level and in the public.
It's my understanding that the city manager is the one that elects the sergeant at arms, and the sergeant at arms helps the presiding officer if there's any lack of decorum within the chambers.
There is no election of the sergeant of arms. It is basically usually the sergeant from the sheriff's office that is in attendance.
So then the city manager elected Schuler to be our sergeant at arms.
I don't believe there was any election at all. It's the city council.
When I use the word election, I don't mean that there was a formal vote. It's the duty of the manager is how I'm referring to an election, to elect, to point, to pick, to choose.
The city manager is responsible for appointing all of the city staff. With respect to the sheriff, that is typically done by contract that the city council approves.
Okay. Time and manner of adjournment. How will it be done since there is no apparent procedure that has been consistent? I'm asking for clarification and the process in which it will be done and followed. In other words, we just witnessed how the presiding officer could just bang the gavel and call for recess, and there was no formal motion. And so sometimes when we don't follow a specific pattern, everything gets confusing and out of order. So I was asking for clarification. Can that be embedded as specifically if there's an initial motion that's going to be done? Certain things don't require a motion. Certain things are discretionary, so forth and so forth, even though I did see a lot of discretion within the presiding officer on other duties that were handed more than the time of adjournment. That was not handed to a presiding officer.
That's exactly why we have incorporated an entire chapter 5, dealing with decorum to address all of those issues so that the council and the public knows exactly how that should work.
Okay, so we can be specific on timing, how much time and the manner of adjournment. That's another suggestion. So now I'm going to move to what is called, I guess, the handbook. For the handbook, I'm going to be a little bit more leisure, less informal. Just a couple of things. So for the first one, it's one, purpose of the manual under A. So it says preparation of agendas, and then it also talks about conduct of meetings and the transactions of other city business. And for here, I was asking, like, preparation of the agenda. I mean, a lot of us, what we do is someone asks, someone seconds, and then it gets on the agenda or it doesn't. Either you or the manager gets to put stuff on the agenda. So can you give me an example? Because we're talking about preparation of the agenda, which includes which items will be there.
Again, this is an introductory chapter dealing just with the purpose of the manual. There's a whole chapter that deals specifically with how those agendas are set forth, and again, it gives a roadmap to both the city council, staff, and the public as to how that occurs.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to jump to 2, effective date and periodic review / update of the manual. A, so it says right here, the rules contained in this manual shall be in effect immediately upon their adoption of the city council. You said that it's 30 days for an ordinance, and this one is immediate, is that right?
That's correct. So the rules and policies in here that are not in conflict with the existing municipal code can be in effect if you adopt the resolution. However, everything that's in conflict with the municipal code will still be governed by the municipal code until 30 days after the second reading.
The biennial review or every 2-year review, who's going to be reviewing this? Not just council, I'm assuming.
Certainly the intent is that the city council would be the one reviewing it, and if they want to direct staff to do so, they should do so.
When you say reviewing, so I could just look at it and bring it up to an agenda item and say, hey, can we review this now? Or the 2 years just pass by and no one bring it up?
I would assume it'd be something that would be on an agenda so the city council can make some concerns or raise any concerns and issues, as can staff at that point, to see if there are any issues that need to be revised. In addition, our office, city attorney's office, can make recommendations because more likely than not in 2 years there will be additional changes in state law that may require some additional changes to this manual.
So during the draft process, I did see, and during prior discussions, that we follow Rosenberg rules. However, reading the role of city council and looking at parliamentary procedure, I noticed that we no longer follow Rosenberg rules. However, after this, I heard you say that we follow Rosenberg rules, so I'm a little bit confused as to what I hear, but what I read, where it says additional ceremonial, parliamentary, and administrative responsibilities. So to me, it's which one is it? Is it still both? Just one?
As is indicated in the manual, Rosenbergs are basically the guidelines that we follow. We are not bound specifically to them, and to the extent something occurs that's outside the rules of Rosenbergs, as Rosenbergs itself provides, that is not going to be something that's basically actionable.
Okay, and then B, establishment of city policy. So as a city policy is established and direction is given to city staff by a majority vote of the council. So we already have that in place, and that's one of our policies, and that's what it's referring to, I'm assuming?
That, again, generally the role of this city council is to provide policy and make policy and then direct staff to implement that policy.
Which is what we have been doing.
That's consistent with the existing policies in place and consistent with portions of the municipal code, all of which are now incorporated into one place.
So what we've been doing is, as a council, we have an agenda item. We all say yes or no, and that's what I'm asking, if we're following policy in that direction.
That's the general intent, yes.
Thank you for that response. C, so I'm just poking at a word here, consistent with the wishes of the majority. Here again, I look at this and I said to myself, why can't it be where we all agree? If there has to be something that's a decision that is binding for the council, why can't we all agree, right? It's not that we're voting on something. It's something to have a discussion. I'm not even asking for all of us to unanimously say yes to vote something. I'm talking about when we do not vote, can we have an idea where we discuss things? Because on many occasions it's been very difficult to have any kind of a discussion, and I feel sometimes that my discussion is just myself and with the general public. The next thing is 2, council election and governance. So I'm just going to read the portion that says, the mayor and mayor pro temp will be appointed by a majority vote of a quorum of the city council. And then further on it says, the city council shall consider the appointment of the mayor and mayor pro temp for blank year terms. First regular meeting in December. I think Kennedy had said something about that, and I think Mayor Garcia had also said something. So here is, I just want to know what would be the qualifications, because I feel if we're just saying, well, this is my friend, let's elect them, are we doing justice to the rest of the community? Are we going to put some kind of qualification? Maybe if you're new and you haven't been in the council for at least 2 years, you know, it doesn't matter who elects you. We're not going to elect you because you don't have experience. What are the qualifications? Not just because it's your friend or because you chose someone because you have a biased understanding or whatever. So I'm seeking for some kind of qualification, something that would guide the rest of the council rather than just it being arbitrary. The next one under role and duties of the mayor. Right here, so in this manual and as may be delegated by the mayor by the majority vote of the council. And I'm assuming that's still what we currently have in play. The next thing is, who quiets the presiding officer when there's a lack of decorum occurring? Are there any procedures for that? Because we have it for the presiding officers to keep order, but as I have noticed, and many of us have noticed, the presiding officer also requires the attention of being quieted and being said, I'm sorry, but it's out of order and you're causing a little bit of chaos. So we don't have an oversight in that regard, and I think we should have it because there's not one that's better than everybody else because we have a higher title. We all have an equal vote. So I would like that to be considered as well. Going on, the mayor or other presiding officers shall also require, if so, to do so by a majority of the council. To me, I didn't understand that. The majority or other presiding officers shall also require, if so, do so. It's just probably the wording that got to me, but now you know how I read things. The next thing is under the seating arrangement for city council. Right here, it says, in council chambers or elsewhere. I already know that there's a assignment of seating being seated, and I get that. But when we say
Madam
council
Mayor, is there
chamber
any way we can
or
bring this to an
elsewhere-
end?
I'm sorry, but
Any way at all?
you don't have the floor, and that's why we're trying to follow municipal code. This is what we're talking about. When we don't know the municipal code and we interrupt each other, I mean, how can anything happen? After this matter, you should have no issue of interjecting yourself. You see, this is what I'm talking about. So I need to know for council members or elsewhere. So this is where we would have the presiding officer quieting the audience, saying, please keep order, but it's not. But when we have someone of my advocacy saying, yay, Blanca, we have a presiding officer quieting that. So those are some of the concerns. So if you begin to see the tension, this has always been here from the get-go. So where it says or elsewhere, so be specific. You know, when I go to a meeting outside in an event, the mayor's going to tell me where to sit. Can we clarify that? She already tells me where to sit in closed session. She tells us where to sit here. But when it says elsewhere, I'm not going to be sitting where she tells me when I'm in a public event. So I would like clarification on that because I'm not going to
It can
be
be clarified.
taking that
I think it
time.
already is, that it only pertains to when you're sitting as a city council.
No, it wasn't clarified. Right here it says or elsewhere, which elsewhere doesn't say what you just said. So if that's the clarification, I mean, that's something that has to be in the policy as well.
Actually, it does say at all meetings of the city council.
So it says, let me read that. The mayor assumes the center chair on the dais and oversees the seating location of the other council members at all meetings of the council, in council chamber, or elsewhere. So I just stopped to the word elsewhere, which means
Again-
anywhere that we're in office.
Again, it says these are meetings of the city council. So if you're at an event and it's not a council meeting, you can sit wherever you like.
Right, or elsewhere probably should be taken off, right?
No, I think it works perfectly. It has to be a council meeting because you don't always have a meeting here. You may have a council meeting in D, you may have a council meeting somewhere else.
So maybe make it more specific in that regard, or
I
maybe
don't-
or say excluding. I'm just the way you are, as an attorney, you know, dissect a lot of the interpretation. So we interpret things differently. So like I said, we don't have to argue about this. These are just my suggestions. When they're not passed, I mean, it's evident it's not going to happen, you know? All I'm saying is I'm making a suggestion.
I think the protection for you is the words, it has to be a council meeting.
That works. If that's
already right there.
Then we don't have to have the word elsewhere. So the next thing is, this is the side talk that the presiding officer calls me with my manager, right? But she has her own side meetings and forget that she doesn't have an overseer that tells her how she's doing the side talking herself, and this is what I regard to. And I'll always point it out so we're aware of what actually takes place. The next one is E, agenda development. So here I'm going to ask for an explanation. It says the city manager, in consultation with the mayor and subject to the rules of this manual, sets the agenda for each council meeting. So I'm asking for an explanation of that. I didn't know.
There are provisions later in this chapter that deals with how meetings agendas are set.
So it just takes 2 individuals to set that council meeting?
It's set forth further on in the agenda, in the policy manual. It spells it out.
So the next one where it says G, absence of the mayor, I'm not going to read that to you, but I'm asking here, what about the absence of, so in approved events? Again, this goes to ceremonial recognitions. When we have an absence, I think the city should always be represented. If there is someone available to represent the city, there are 5 of us.
Again, this is referring to council meetings of the city council, and it specifically says that.
I see that. And so I'm reiterating to decontextualize and take the same essence and saying, if we have policies that work against the city, please let's consider looking at the same idea. So thank you for that response. The next thing is, it says seek prior clarification of agenda items. So right here it says council members should request answers to questions on agenda items and attach from the city manager. So I just wanted to let you and everybody know that I will continue asking at the dais the questions that need to be asked in clarification. As this last time we saw a lot of the consent calendar, I did go individually and try to ask questions, and I found myself trying to go to 5 different people and not getting the responses from the manager because he doesn't know it all, and I get that. And it became more frustrating for me when I have a group full of staff here and I can just ask my questions. So I will continue to ask.
And again, this language indicates that those questions are to be asked prior to the council meetings.
And I understand that. And like I said, I didn't ask for your request or answer to that. I just said I'm going to continue to ask questions, and that's what I'm going to continue doing. So number 3, to avoid unfair surprises. So here I just said, what's the purpose? If you want to read it, I don't think I should probably read that.
Do you want an answer?
Please, if you can provide what the purpose of this is.
Again, this is to give staff the opportunity to be able to be responsive to the council so they have time to review issues prior to a meeting so they can give you the best answer possible so that you then can make good decisions.
And so when I ask and I get an I don't know and I ask up here and I get an answer, how is that a surprise? Anyways, you don't have to answer that. B, council member appointments and assignments. So here, I'm just going to read a little piece. It talks about resolution 13-049. And I said, well, what does that look like? What is that? What is that resolution talking about? So can we please attach that? And I'll probably look at it in future. We don't have that here. I would appreciate that. For ex officio rules, I was going to ask that privately to Carolee, so I won't bring that up here. Due process. So a lot of this here says refer to chapter 3, section 4 of this manual, refer to chapter 5, it says always a review. So my suggestion was just to avoid this type of reference back and forth. I'd actually like to see it placed directly under its explanation. And of course, again, this is just a suggestion, nothing pressing for anybody else that doesn't agree with me. F, it's issuing subpoenas. I was wondering, when will City Council be issuing a subpoena? Maybe it's dealing with litigation. If that's the case, I can understand. But if it's issuing a subpoena in another regard, I may need an explanation.
It could be in terms of if there's some sort of hearing and we need formally testimony that is done with a court reporter. Basically what this says is the City Council has the ability to actually ask for formal testimony, if they need to be. It would be typically in an appeal hearing or some type of hearing like that,
All right,
or
thank you.
litigation.
Also, resolution number 09-059, once again, if you could just please attach that, I have no clue what that is. That would help out as well. For the principles and the standards, the principles and the standards of ethic conduct of the City of Victorville council members are hereby established as set forth, and we have a lot of enumerations of these. So I was wondering who was the oversight of the board of the council, and how did these principles and standards come about? Because I know I wasn't included in the discussion. My discussion comes in now at a later time where it's a consistent vote, and we will be voting. So did you talk to others, or?
This is one of those policies that basically is previously already on the books.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Just give me a moment. Just pause for a bit.
This is an example of where, again, we have incorporated existing policies and procedures into this manual. So this already exists. It's previously been approved by this council.
So you had no discussion with anybody else, any city staff? It's just merely municipal code?
As I noted previously, the intent of this manual is to incorporate existing policies previously adopted by this council, as well as provisions of the municipal code, and put them all into one comprehensive document without making too many changes.
And as I asked you previously, you did not talk to any city staff member or council member to come up with this. It was only municipal code and the existing documents that you used.
Exactly. That's what
Okay, thank you.
the direction from the council when I was tasked with this was to look at and incorporate and consolidate municipal code provisions that already exist, existing policy provisions that already exist, things like Rosenberg's, and put them all into one comprehensive place so everybody, including the council, the public, and the staff, can find them easily without making significant changes to them.
I just want to make sure that you didn't sit with any one of us directly and we fed you this information. You just gathered it unbiasedly. That's my point of asking.
I did not sit with any council member and go through this independently.
Okay.
I offered that to you to sit down and go through and answer all your questions. I offered it to all council members. Nobody took me up on it.
So the decision based on merit, what's the measure of the standard for this vague or general thought? So it says council members shall base their decisions on the merits and substance of the matters at hand rather than on unrelated consideration. It's like vague, like what are you saying here? What is this?
Again, that's a prior policy of this council, of a previous council adopted, and I just incorporated it into this document.
So would you mind explaining what the meaning of this would be, since you just pulled it out from the municipal code? Because I really don't understand what merit, I mean, how is that predefined?
Basically, your role as a council person is to consider the information before you and make an informed decision based on the merits, based on what you're hearing, and make an informed decision in your best judgment.
Right, thank you for that. And then 13, enforcement. The sentence says, although this code of ethics and conduct is intended to be self-enforcing and will be most effective when council members are thoroughly familiar with and embrace its provisions, so forth. And then it says, city council members who intentionally and repeatedly do not follow proper conduct may be subject to censure as set forth in Chapter 10 of this manual. So again, I was just trying to avoid the going around, beating around the bush. Maybe if it were added there. Again, it's only a suggestion. Here in regular meetings, so I'm going to jump to item C. You probably answered this question, but because it's in writing, what is orally said versus written, I think usually whatever is in writing takes precedence over what is hearsay or said without it being recorded. So I want to make sure this is the understanding. Here, I just circled the word Ralph M. Brown Act. So I was asking, can we have a workshop to have the Ralph Brown Act? Should this be mandatory, maybe on a yearly basis, and have it to be a requirement for individuals such as ourselves, since we don't seem to be using parliamentary procedure? Maybe the minor question that we just call for the question, which I hear that all the time at VBWA, but there are so many more than that. So I would suggest that if we're going to be compliant with Ralph M. Brown Act, I don't know when's the last time this council had an actual 2-hour type of ethics meeting that's required by law, but not required for a workshop, that if we can probably implement something like that, or have it even open, it's not mandatory, where we have a session outdoor and we invite the public to do so. That's just a suggestion that I'm asking as well. B, under meeting minutes, it says reading not required. So here just circle the word majority vote of the council. So new, before one council member, which shouldn't change. And then going down to reports from the city manager. So the city manager provides brief, general announcements. Should our city manager be timed too? Because I know council members are. And if that's the case, I would like to see that imposed. I'm not saying that here at length. I'm just trying to make equality here for all of us. So don't take that personal. Just pointing out timing, that's all I'm doing. The presiding officer. So here for reports from council members, J, it says the presiding officer has the responsibility to assist council members by signaling when the council member is nearing his or her 5-minute speaking limit. So here, because of the nature of this council, where there is a lot of disrespect, a lot of bickering back and forth, I would ask that the presiding officer not be the one to cue, because instead of cueing, it becomes an argument back and forth. And I think what we want to avoid as a city is a bickering back and forth or something that's jeering. So I would ask that maybe just like the city clerk tells our audience and we put the light on, maybe let's do that so it doesn't seem like someone is saying something to someone else, but not the presiding officer. Unless the presiding officer is able to do this in the same manner that she would direct the audience and try to be very nice and sensible, even though she hosts, according to a lot of us, a very powerful position as the ward mayor, even though it's rotational, we elect the mayor, it's not at large. So that's a suggestion as well. For E, it's under germane comments / time limit for council. I think this section is redundant. I think it's been spelled out, so I would just leave this one out. For policy-related requests, I'm not going to read it. I was just seeking to see if there was some example for that. If not, I understand. I'll continue going. For F, participation in community activities, I circled the word interested parties, and I'll read some of it. It says the council member is acting as an interested party rather than acting on behalf of the city council. A lot of the time, our vocabulary insinuates a narrative that we want to, poke at someone else. So instead of calling it an interested party, why don't we look at a council member as a private community member? And I understand that it's very difficult at times when the community sees a council member out in the street and cannot take the fact that they're also their representative, but we are also human beings. So taking away that interested party, which gives it a very negative connotation of a narrative to a council member, I think I would have that as a private community member. Let's give some life to and humanity to a politician as well, right? And that's, again, my suggestion. Here, I'm on duties. I'm not going to read it. I would just say if we can add.
What page are you on?
Here I am, duty. So 3 boards, commissions, and committees on which council members serve as city representatives. I'm on D, which is titled duties. So here I would add, if there's a delegate and an alternate and they cannot attend, there should be another council member in the place of that member to attend. On too many occasions as a council member, not having maybe but one alternate position, I don't sit as a delegate and an alternate to a lot of the regionals votes that we have that affect our city, not only at the city level and the high desert level, but at the region, at the county level. So because I'm a full-time council member, I have the luxury of sitting on each and every meeting as an audience, and I observe that sometimes the council members as delegates do not attend and their alternates do not attend. I'm not saying that it's something rampant. I've only been here for 9 months, but I have noticed that. So I would ask that if the delegate or the alternate cannot attend, perhaps instead of having no voice at the seat, if you want the third designee to come in and voice your concern or voice your vote, I would rather have that vote in rather than missing it. In the perfect example, besides our regional meetings and regular meetings that we cast our votes, are the California League of Cities, where council members elect themselves and there's major votes that are happening at the state level but yet don't show up. I think that's very important when you profess to be a leader and you say you're going to show up, but things happen. Can you create someone or make someone a designee if they're going to be there so that your vote still counts for the city and for what is being affected? I think I'm not asking for too much. I think the city deserves to be very well represented, especially if we have some council members that have more time than others to be there. We're here to help each other. I'm not here to take anybody else's position, just to make it a better city. In addition, if the delegates or the alternates don't attend, maybe I'd like to see a list that's presented to us as council, should there ever be maybe something like this at a quarterly basis. Like I said, I'm not pointing any fingers, and I'm not saying that people don't show up most of the time, but I'm starting to see a pattern. And I'm not micromanaging my council members. I'm just concerned of the city, and I'm saying if you don't have time, get a designee, a third one. The alternate can attend, the delegate can attend, you're casting votes, script what you want to be said at SBCTA, at BBWIA if you're absent, wherever it is. That's my suggestion for here. And any other commissions that the city council members sit on. Here now, the best and interesting part that came on May 21st by Negretti was on the censure procedure. This is a very interesting part. Here, a censure authorized section says, as an elected official, but a censure is a punitive action that serves as a punishment for wrongdoing. I wanted to know, what is the definition? What are we going to do as a punitive action? Because that's important for all of us council members to know what punitive action is in legalese.
Typically, punitive action basically just in this case means that you might, if the council so desires, an individual that's violating the rules would first be subject to these procedures. There'd be a resolution of censure, and if there was a punitive damage, it might be something like taking away a appointment to a commission, something like that.
So it'd be a sanction?
I wouldn't call it a sanction, no.
Okay, so not a sanction. You said something like taking away their seating.
No, not your seating, your appointment to basically a commission or to a, to a different board or commission.
So would it be?
They have the right to do that by majority vote in any case.
Okay, so would it be possible to maybe put something? Because to me, a punitive action, is it monetary? I mean,
No.
Is it just?
It's pretty clear through the censure procedure what you can and cannot do, and it's basically all it is a reprimand of a council person that's not following the rules. Adopted by a resolution, the only thing typical councils will do is sometimes take away the basically commission appointments of that individual. But again, that's up to a majority vote of the council, and it only assumes something's going wrong in the first place.
Yeah, well, it's not, Andre, very well spelt out, and that's why I asked, because this was the most interesting part to me. So when it said just the word punitive action, I was wondering what that meant, if they already have the authority to vote. I mean, if I could already foresee something of this nature occurring without the censorship, just saying, well, we're going to get a vote and we want this to occur, and it just happens, basically. I get that. But I wanted to have something, a measurable standard, rather than someone arbitrarily says, well, this is what we're going to decide now. I mean, we don't want to decide things at the moment. If we already have it, now we have a guideline and a goal to what it is to have something to be restorative, if that's what needs to be in. So as a suggestion, I would like to see punitive action examples. This is what it is, so we don't decide after the fact. The other thing is here for requests for censure hearing. It says, during the open portion of any regular or special meeting of City Council. So here I just stopped there, and I'm thinking, only the agenda item, not in any other portions, because here we're asking to have something put on the agenda outside of policy that we've already said. Why don't we keep it the same? If we have an agenda item, why don't we use that specific section during every council meeting to provide this censure hearing? Why should it be done during council comments? Why should it be done in the beginning of an introduction when we already have a set space? I think we have a set space. I think putting this and that portion of the meeting rather than calling a special meeting because we're going to censure someone, it's best if we first put it as that agenda item in that little realm rather than have it free flow for everyone. I think that would be creating more order. That's my suggestion again. And then here under support, hearing, or investigation for the censure policy, I see how the council, when they support a request, there's also going to be what is an ad hoc committee. And in this ad hoc committee, I said, who's going to be in this committee? And I remember it's going to be 2 of the council members. I think that's conflictual, right? What we would end up doing is we'd have the person who's being accused of violation of a censorship, and then you would have 2 council members. And so why would we do that? I mean, I don't see that being good, especially when your council members are the ones saying you're doing the wrong, so now I'm going to nail it on you. I think that doesn't look appropriate. It almost looks like we attack each other and waiting for someone to make a mistake to say, oh, this is what's going to happen. Let's put it on the agenda. We want to attack her. Let's get the evidence against her. I don't think that's what we're seeking to do, but this is what I find when I see the ad hoc committee and we're having council members sitting on it, being the 2 council members with who knows who else accusing the 1 other council member. I see that as friction. So I would not appreciate seeing something like that. The next thing is when no investigation is required. So it says if the conduct or violation alleged is patent or otherwise clearly apparent. So I said, well, apparent to who? Because what I've seen at this dais is I'm rude because I ask questions. So I'm deemed to be rude, right? So clearly apparent, what does that mean to who, how, when, where? I mean, we're so vague, and I understand we're gung-ho of getting something like this done. So that's apparent to who. Is there a measurable standard of some regard? Are we going to follow some case law where this has already been followed, so it gives direction to the rest of the staff? Or are we just creating things as these come by? And then B, investigation. Like I said, it says ad hoc committee consisting of its members, and that's where I read in council member, right? My interpretation, of course, including the mayor. My God, if I were to be accused of a violation of a censorship, she'd hang me right off the bat. She already doesn't like me, and I would say she's being biased, and that would not help all of us when we're trying to run a city and we're trying to be friendly for the city. We don't have to like each other. So I saw that as very conflictual if that were to be within these next 2 years where we have the mayor doing something of that nature, right? Or Blanca committing a censorship violation of some sort where everybody agreed but me. So I can see that as a huge problem. So again, I would not appreciate that. And then the next one would be independent. Let's let the mayor laugh a little bit. She needs her peace of mind. Would you like to speak to? I'm sorry, I'm not the presiding officer. We'll let the presiding officer do that. So the next thing would be the independent investigator. So here it says that the council may select an independent investigator. My God, I thought, whose expense? Looks like taxpayers such as yourself would be paying for an investigator. And I thought, to assist in conducting the investigation, the independent investigator would be managed by the ad hoc committee to conduct the investigation. We didn't discuss monies of this being appropriated from taxpayer money because there's a censorship and council members can't get along. I think that does an injustice, and that calls for the attention of voters, in my opinion. Expense. We don't say who the expenses would be to. So I'm worried about that. I don't want your taxpayer money going because we need to investigate a council member or a presiding officer. I don't think that's what our role is here.
That's why the word may is there. It's not a mandate.
Right. But even to have that, it says if we vote on it, you understand we're all voting for yes, may. A casted vote means yes. It no longer says may. Now we vote. It's a yes, in my opinion. That's how it reads. Independent investigator. The council may select an independent investigator. so the council has that right, to assist in conducting the investigation. The independent investigator would be managed by the ad hoc committee to conduct the investigation. And then, so I would think, are we going to add this to a budgeted item when we approve the yearly budget? Should there be a vote, maybe a special election so the voters can say yes or no? I mean, when do we do this? Is this just us? Well, anyways, thinking about money again. Here, I'm looking at censure hearing, section C under investigation guidelines. I'm sorry, it's conclusion of investigation. So here it says, at the conclusion of the investigation, the results shall be presented in writing to the full council. Based on the results, upon a majority vote of the council, a censure hearing may be set in accordance with subsection C. And I'm thinking, well, what does this look like? How are we following? What are we doing in a censure hearing? Is it a public hearing? I have no clue what to expect, what to see, what to foresee. Are we reinventing something here? So I needed clarification. What does that look like? Just a typical legal hearing where we have audience?
That's why there's a whole section in here about due process. So anybody that's subject to this will have the opportunity to be heard, to present evidence, et cetera, et cetera. That's why this is what most cities do. This is a due process ability that if the majority goes through this process and it has protections in there for the person that's subject to it, they have the ability to have a hearing, to have an attorney. And in fact, if they want an attorney, the city's going to pay for that attorney.
So, I mean, we talk a lot about money, but we fail to talk about money when we're talking about a hearing and censorship. So I just want to bring that up to light. The committee may be staffed by administrative and legal staff. How biased can we get? We're already hiring, right, if we need to, through a majority vote, through taxpayer money. Well, hey, I guess we don't need to give anybody their 10% furlough back because we're going to use it right here, so that's how you get your 10% furlough. So I think that's very biased to continue to have some administration. Not that I even agree with the censure hearing at all. And then D, it says the committee shall issue a final report and recommendations to the city council. The final report shall be made available to the public. So I'm thinking, well, where are the people in this whole process? It looks like we're governing ourselves, and I was troubled by that as well. So we have two council members accusing a third council member voting and saying, here's a report to the community. Look what just happened. I mean, let's think about that. The next thing is here under censure hearing C, it says, the mayor or mayor pro temp, if the mayor is the subject of the charges, shall preside at the hearing. I mean, come on, I just said it's not possible to have the mayor in this instance. And when someone's accusing me of censorship, I mean, I'd be hung before I even have a fair trial or a jury, and spending the taxpayer money when we talk about all these expenses. I mean, how are we creating a censorship? It's for me. It's not for anybody else. I mean, even though here it reads it's not any bias, right? But I do see that. Anyways, so my suggestion is we should not have the presiding officer in this regard. We should have someone that's outside, a third party, not any vested here, watching and feeling the turmoil or this, because you're not going to be unbiased. That's my suggestion. And then here, D, resolution of the censure. It says, upon request of a council member, the city shall reimburse the council member's reasonable attorney's fees and costs in defending himself or herself. To me, that sounds like a scheme for council members to make more money. I don't think that's due process. I don't think that's something that we should be doing.
You understand that's for the council person being accused, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do. To me, all of this is just nonsense. It just is. But like I said, upon a council member, well, who wouldn't? You know, you spend all this money of your own pocket that you get to try to defend yourself. You probably want someone to reimburse you, right? You're looking for deep pockets. So that's what I'm saying. It just sounds like a scheme for council members just to make more money. And even if that's not the case and that's not how it should go, I think that's how it's starting to look like, at least to me. And here for the acknowledgement of receipt and understanding of the manual, I'd just like to add that there should be at least 2 mandatory yearly meetings that take 2 hours with administration staff, which includes the city attorney and the manager, that they sit with us as an open meeting and go through this manual immediately before the signature begins. So one, I'm asking, we talk about it. We're probably doing that already right now. But then make it mandatory to have these consistent meetings, something like the ethics 2-hour meeting, because you don't want to go through this step. You're spending too much money, and it's not a fair deal. I think I don't know what many cities, maybe 50% of our cities in California are doing this. I don't know the studies. I don't know if staff did any research on that. I just don't know. But that's the end of my suggestions and my short briefness of what it was for this manual, because I could have had 10 more pages, but I decided that I would cut some slack and not get into everything. Thank you.
I'd like to move that we approve the,
And would that be with,
I would like to include Mr. Cox's suggestion and mine. When it clearly understood, it doesn't mean the mayor can't be reelected time and time and time again. I just think we should do that election once a year.
your motion is essentially to approve the manual with the 1-year term of the mayor, and then to make the revisions that Mr. Cox suggested, that these votes on these important issues be a majority of the entire council.
Yes.
What I
Second.
understand.
And just to clarify, that would be the introduction of ordinance number 2367. So there's a motion by Mr. Kennedy and a second by Mr. Cox.
And does the motion include waive further reading?
And to waive further reading, yes.
That's included in the second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye, and I'd like the minutes to reflect my opposition to the majority's vote being the following. This is absurd when you add a censure hearing and develop it all to be one under a handbook, calling it the best interest of the city business to be produced.
Now,
Thank you.
am I correct in believing that at this moment, now, this manual is in force?
Provisions that are not inconsistent with the existing municipal code are in force, but there are still provisions of the municipal code that we follow.
So I would ask at this moment that city clerk, for all council member comments, please start your machine there, and at 5 minutes, it'll ring, and that'll be the end of the council members' comments.
That's already embedded immediately. That is done.
Madam Mayor, I request a 3-4 minute recess before we continue on.
I'll just announce the vote that the motion carried with Councilmember Gomez voting no.
Second.
Second for the recess.
No, the vote's taken. Yeah.
Yeah, she's motion now for recess.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Second. Everybody's in their votes in favor?
What?
Yes.
Have jobs to go to tomorrow. Some people work.
Let's get to business.
Keep a 5-minute limit.
I will move approval of the consent calendar.
Okay, we're on consent calendar. Items C1 through C8 can be approved with one motion unless there's an item that needs to be removed for discussion. Can I have a motion?
You have a motion, I second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Mr. Cox. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Motion carries with Mr. Negretti absent.
Now we move on to written communications.
And Mayor, could I ask that we delay this discussion till the next meeting? There are people here that have serious business with the council, and we don't need to talk about fire tonight, do we?
I don't even have any cards.
Yeah. Do we need?
Can make a motion to table it to the next meeting.
I move to table it. I'm sorry, Jim.
We have people here to talk about fire service, too. Well, I think we, I
I
thought
don't
we
have
did.
any cards.
Okay, well,
Uh,
if there's items here, we've had a substantial delay. If there's items here that people are waiting on, can we go to those items? I don't want to put this off the next meeting because we've got a lot of questions, a lot of issues related to this fire service that need to be discussed. I'm going to request the city council have a forum.
There is one card. They just brought it to my attention. Clayton Moore. Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't even gotten to the written communications. Item D1, discussion and possible action regarding fire services. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
There is no recommendation on this item, Mayor Garcia. Any action or direction would be at the direction of the city council.
Thank you. I do have one card. Clayton Moore. Did he leave? Clayton Moore. D1.
Okay, the fire service, yes. I've got to attend some of the workshops you've had on that, and I read an article in the paper just last week about Measure K and the protest from the unions about it. And the thing that was missing from that article, if the ballot measure fails and you're faced with annexing into the county for the fire services, that's a permanent change. A permanent change. And it comes with a 3% annual increase that was based on the $153 base amount every year. And that also wasn't reflected in the article. And when I was here before, I asked for more of the educational campaign that was proposed to presumably explain the alternatives without endorsing any particular one, but to clearly elucidate the choices in a compare and contrast side-by-side manner so it would be clear to the voters what kind of choice they're making, what they're faced with. Because again, you mentioned in the proposal before you designed the ballot measure that there was Apple Valley was considering a variable parcel tax as opposed to a straight parcel tax. Things like that didn't seem to get much consideration. And now you have a ballot measure in about a month, just over a month. It's going to go before the voters. It requires a 67% rate to pass. And without that, it sounds like you're facing the direct prospect that you faced a year ago of annexing to the county on this permanent basis. And I'd like, again, to hear more discussion about that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else that would like to speak on this item? I don't see anyone. Did you want to?
For the few people, I don't know how many watch the Daily Press forum, what I got after that was a lot of calls indicating they wanted more information. When I explained that the city council could not be an advocate, it was certainly explained, though, from people who knew, and they were correct, that the city council has a responsibility to inform the public of what they're facing. There's been articles in the newspaper. Mr. Kennedy wrote an op-ed that said this is not an up or down, this is either or. You approve a sales tax, or the alternative is to go into the county. We have a lot of misinformation being disseminated. It is totally unfair. Somebody's going to oppose it, just say you oppose it and make up your own reason, but don't tell lies about our proposal. Thing is that the city can do two things. It can have a forum. It also can send out a mailer to all the registered voters informing them of all the facts. It can't be a proponent saying this is good or bad, but it can be very factual. I want to make a request to the council because this is the discussion and possible action, that the city has a responsibility to inform the voters, and that I want the council to authorize a mailer to all the registered voters in the city. Very factual, very pointed, reviewed by the manager. Every councilman have an input, reviewed by the attorney. But those facts are really difficult for the public to understand. Just a few comments. Well, if you annex into the county, it doesn't work out, you can always take it back. No, you can't. Well, there's going to be 2 more votes after November. No, there's not. Individuals who call me are just really angry that they don't have all the data, and the data they have received is simply not correct. Just not correct. So we owe that to the public, and I think we also, the Daily Press has agreed to have 2 forums. Put to our city manager to work out that date with the Daily Press. This will leave the mayor or a representative of the city, but whoever the council chooses. There may be at least 1 or 2, but I'd like to see the city council schedule a forum in these chambers, go through this and answer the questions. Now, the gentleman that talked tonight, my cell phone is 954-7677. I'll spend all the time you need to explain the pros and cons. I'll meet with you individually to explain the pros and cons. I've made that available to everyone, and my phone is rung off the hook, and I don't know the dozens and dozens of hours that I've been spending on this. If somebody wants the facts, I'm available. If they have another motive, don't call me, but I'm available. So we're running out of time. We have a month. Pretty dismal because of the distortions that are being told to the public. Shame on those individuals who are lying about this. I mean, shame on them. I don't want them in this city, but have to put them. So that's why I wanted it on here. That's why I want to discuss. We're not going to get into all the things tonight, but I think that the city council can take 2 actions. It's a council decision, majority rule. Have a forum and send out a mailer explaining what this really means. Voters and taxpayers of the city.
That'd be good. That'd be good to have a motion to have those 2 things considered.
What kind of forum do you have in mind, Jim? We've agendized it for council meetings. Do you think it ought to be something else other than that?
Yes, I do, and I'll tell you why. There was some discussion that people didn't know anything about it, and the council should have spoken out. We've had, 6 hearings since January, Madam Clerk?
That's
I think 6 hearings. But from what I'm hearing and the calls after we had the forum of the Daily Press, well, they really didn't realize what was at stake. You know, who wants to go to a council meeting unless they really understand? And you had 25 items, so they didn't want to sit here for 2.5 hours not knowing if this specific discussion was going to take place. This is extremely important to the people in the city, and so I think we need to have a study session. This is the only agenda item to be discussed.
I make a motion.
Make the motion. I'll second it.
Is that going to also include the second part, which was to send out informational
And send
mailer?
out the mailer. And send out the mailer.
So the motion is to hold a separate independent forum and to send out a mailer, informational mailer.
motion by Mayor Garcia, second by Councilmember Kennedy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
I haven't had the opportunity to address these concerns, and we're filing a motion or putting a motion in play. So I'd like to have my comments before I cast my vote and give a little bit more information to what is being said, more contextualization. So I guess I'll start by saying that City Council did advocate a for argument signed by Cox, Negretti, Kennedy, and Garcia. I was the only one that dissented and was reluctant as a member of the body of the City of Victorville not to put my name on the for argument of this tax that will be imposed if 66% of the electoral vote of voters say yes. With that said, Measure K, City of Victorville, we have an impartial analysis of Measure K. I don't know if any of you have read it or have had it in your possession, but as soon as I did, I knew I wanted to make it public so that you knew what's happening. The impartial analysis of Measure K has been prepared by the city attorney pursuant to Section 9280 of the California Election Code. Measure K asks voters to approve an ordinance enacting 1/2 cent, a special transaction and use sales tax within the city of Victorville. This special tax is restricted to funding public safety services in Victorville in accordance with an expenditure plan that includes the addition of 10 new police officers and 15 new firefighters/paramedics to the city's forces, opening Fire Station 315 near Sunset Ridge Park, equipment training and support to these additional personnel, and acquiring life safety apparatus for fire services. The tax revenues, an estimated $8.5 million per year, will supplement, not replace, existing city public safety services expenditures as reflected in the Victorville's 2017-2018 budget and cannot lawfully be used for any other purposes. Currently, state and local retail sales tax in Victorville is 7.75% of the purchase price by Victorville, but Victorville only receives 1% of this amount. The remainder goes to the state and San Bernardino County Transportation Authority. Measure K would increase the total sales tax rate in Victorville from 7.75 to 8.25%, i.e. would add a 1/2 cent to the price of an item that costs $1. If adopted, collection of this tax is expected to commence April 1st, 2018. Technically, the existing sales tax is a combination of sales tax and use tax and transactions and use tax. Retailers collect both taxes in the time of sales and remit the funds to the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, which administers the taxes. Both are levied on the retail sale of use personal property within certain exceptions. The sales tax will be collected where the sales is made in Victorville or where the goods and delivered and placed used in Victorville. Merchandise purchased in a walk-in store retail is assumed by the state to be used within the city in which the store is located, and the applicable tax will be paid by both residents and non-residents, unless the retailer is asked to ship the merchandise outside the city as part of the sales, or it is a motor vehicle, which is tax based on the city of registered use. Certain necessities of life include purchases of food or medicine. They're exempt from the tax. Measure K requires annual city council reviews and readoption of an expenditure plan consistent with the ordinances mandated, as well as annual verification by the city's independent auditor to ensure that tax revenues are being used for the specified public safety purposes. The separate fund or account established for deposit of the tax revenue is further subject to annual audit and reporting in the city's financial statement. Measure K was placed on the ballot by a 2/3 vote of the city council. A yes is a vote to approve the additional 1/2 cent sales tax for public safety services in Victorville. A no is a vote against the tax. Measure K will be approved if it receives a 2/3 majority of yes votes. And with that, I want to continue to say, like I said, I didn't put my name on that. And I'm very concerned that we would use city funds to continue to push something that the majority of the council finds it feasible. I mean, in other things, when we started with FP5, talking discussions with LAFCO, we didn't push for this. We didn't put out a mailer either. It was just a solemn discussion between council, 1 or 2 meetings, if that.
Councilmember Gomez, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, this is not council comments. This is actually an agenda item. And
That was
so
part
I
of the
know
policy manual.
This is time limited.
We know that it's council comments that are limited. These are not council commented.
It was also in the policy manual. That was a revision in the policy manual as well.
Well, later on, just point it out to me. So how much time do I have, since all of you have taken my time to tell me how much time I have left?
5 seconds.
Okay, well, that's inclusive of the discussion with you guys.
Those are your comments.
Now your
not
time is
ours.
up.
Okay, so I'm going to finish with saying that I continue to support the position of having an
Time
FP5
is up.
district
I'd like to vote, please.
for
Your
our
time
fire
is up. Your
protection.
time
We
is
had to
up.
have
I'm still going to talk even if you talk over me. It doesn't matter.
It's time to vote.
You took my time, so I'm going to take it back. Like I said, I continue to support the position of having an FP5. I continue to support the position. I continue
this
to
meeting.
support the position of
council
having an
person isn't
FP5
going to
district
abide
for
by the
our
rules.
protection services provided
This,
and oppose that tax.
Adjourn.
We're going to be gone to community members and to the passerbyers. Thank you for letting me finish my sentence.
Andre,
They're taking
am
my
I
time.
right in believing that it is totally inappropriate for us to be sitting here advocating one way or the other?
Yes,
You're
Your Hon-
advocating too.
No, we're not.
Against the
No,
law.
we're not.
Put your
isn't it?
signatures
not.
on that measure.
I want the
That
attorney.
letter was
No.
informative, and I'll stand by it.
You put
It
your
didn't
name on
advocate.
it. That's
Wait a
an
minute, wait a minute.
advocate.
It's a legal opinion that when we place that on the ballot, the council may have a position for, and it was in accordance with the law. It's not an advocate letter.
So now you see
No,
where
no,
we
no,
stand.
No. We're going to listen to the attorney, not you. You're not the attorney. You're not going to give
Make
us
sure
legal
you
advice.
listen between those words.
No, listen carefully. You're the very reason we have to have these silly rules, just because of
I'm
this
glad
nonsense.
you were present because you cannot catch this outside.
No. Can we vote,
nuts.
please?
Yes.
There was a motion, a second, and the only vote, Mayor Garcia, Mayor Pro Tem Cox, and Councilmember Kennedy all voted in favor. Councilmember
In
Gomez?
favor of?
In favor.
I'm sorry. You continue to take time. If he's being time, why aren't you calling his time?
You're voting against it or
Every time
for
you
it?
interrupt me, I cannot hear and I have to reassess
Pay
what is
attention.
being said.
Pay
I can't
attention.
pay when you're yelling.
Oh,
I'm asking for clarification.
There's a motion to approve having a forum and to sending out a informational flyer.
No, I don't agree for the following reason. We shouldn't be using taxpayer money to advocate
No.
for what four council members have already
No.
And
put in
over,
vote
continue.
for.
Stop.
Please add that to the minutes. I
Stop.
do have that right.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
Violates state
Yes,
law to
I
do that.
do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. My God, do you see how you have people outside being just as childish as all four of us are?
Move on, please.
Yes, we can when you stop talking.
Okay, I'm moving on to item
Writing
D2.
officer should shut you up too.
Inclusion of properties within the territory of the city.
Presiding
Inclusion of
officer?
properties within the territory of the city of Victorville in various open PACE programs. And that's resolution 17-038, 17-039, 17-057, 17-058. Any subject action or further direction for staff is at the discretion of the city council. I do have some cards. The first one is Jonathan Keebles.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and residents of Victorville. My name is Jonathan Keplis. I represent Renew Financial. We are the
I'm sorry, I mispronounced your last
No
name.
problem. You aren't the first. I represent Renew Financial, the California First PACE program administrator here in California. We are active in almost every city now here in San Bernardino County, and in fact are active in over 400 counties and local governments around the state. We're very happy to have new legislation that actually puts more restrictions on our program to make sure that our customers, our homeowners are protected. One of these includes, in addition to last year's legislation, which I believe is in your packet, last year's legislation requires that we have a disclosure form modeled after the NOBO 400 form, which is now required in the mortgage industry. New legislation that goes into effect January 1st will require us to follow up that signed acknowledgement of terms with an oral recorded phone call, a conversation to make sure that every one of our customers is called and we make sure they understand exactly what they're signing up for. I think this is the most important part of PACE in terms of its evolution as a program to protect consumers, that they know exactly what they're doing so that going forward they are not surprised by a bill or any of the other situations they may run into when they try to refinance or sell. So in any event, very happy to have this brought back before your council. We were here 2 years ago and the program was still a little rocky, but I think now legislation recently passed. We have much more solid footing for our customers and certainly more comfort for the city councils around the state, like here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
here for any questions that may come up.
Thank you. Douglas McMillan.
Hello, and thank you for having us here. And my name is Douglas McMillan, General Manager for California Showcase Construction. And, you know, first thing I want to say is, You know, our agenda is to take care of our customers, to provide home improvements, energy-saving home improvements, but to take care of those customers. That's very important to our owner, Brian Jones, and very important to me, because when we take care of those customers, our business just flourishes, you know. And PACE, we've been involved with PACE since about 2011 with Yucaipa. The city of Yucaipa had a PACE program that we first got involved with that. So we've seen it grow into this this larger, you know, thing where private entities get involved, and we've seen a lot of things change. And like the gentleman before me mentioned, there's a lot of Senate bills out now that kind of regulate that and help the homeowner to be protected, and we're glad to see that. We've done probably about $2.5 million in PACE product in the city of Victorville since 2012. Quite a bit of home improvements for homeowners. We're a medium-sized company, and we've seen probably, we do about 1,000 homes a year with PACE. We always follow up with our customers because we have a lot of different products, so we call them to check on them and see if they need any other products, and all our products are lifetime warranty. So when we follow those up, we ask them questions like how everything's going. So because we follow up, we're able to talk to these customers later on. Some of them have moved and sold the house. The warranties transferred to the new homeowner. So we've seen PACE transfer to the new homeowner. We've seen it be taken care of at the point of sale. We don't see any problems with foreclosures or any issues that that evolve because of PACE, you know, and I know that's a big concern for you guys, for your constituents, and for homeowners as well. I think the main point here is the regulations that are now involved in this, with following up with the customer to protect them, is a great thing. It's great for the homeowner. It's great for the businesses to flourish. And one main thing that I want to mention is, when it started, we were a decent-sized company. You know, the owner worked 6 days a week. I worked 6 days a week. We worked very hard to take care of our customers. When PACE came around, we started to have to hire new employees. We went from about 40 employees to about 60 employees really quick, and now we have about 72 employees. I emailed all of you a little email that I wanted to mention, you know, who we were and how important this was to our business and to our employees and to homeowners as well. I have PACE at my house. I got home improvements done at my house, and I used a PACE program. You know, so this is something I really believe in. It allows people to get energy home improvements, save money on energy costs. Even though it costs them a little bit, they save money, and there's some different savings for them. So I appreciate you having us here. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcy Rodriguez. And after Marcy will be Cecil Bulge.
I'm a homeowner here in Victorville. I've been up here about 9 years. And I'm here to talk about the PACE program. I think it's a wonderful program, and that's something that residents up here really need. Like myself, you know, if I need a home improvement, I don't have $25,000 to pay for a roof. And I've talked to a lot of my neighbors, a lot of my friends that live here in Victorville, and they wish they had the program here. I know it's here before, and it's, you know, it's no longer here. They have it in Hesperia, in Adelanto, and people get their homes fixed. But there's a lot of people up here in Victorville, especially the older part of Victorville, that the homes need to be repaired, and people don't have the money or they don't have the credit. And I know that with the PACE program, they're able to fix their homes, go green. And you know, winter's coming up, people need roofs. There's a lot of people that I know personally that need to get their roofs fixed. They don't have the money. And the windows, they have cheap windows. Their windows are broken. They don't have the money. And with the PACE Club, with the PACE program, it gives them the ability to be able to fix their homes. And like myself, there's things I want to do to my home, and a lot of improvements. And I can't afford to put new windows in, put a new roof, and with the PACE program, I would benefit, and a lot of people would benefit. And like that gentleman said, it also, it gives the ability to hire more people to work here in Victorville. The high desert, you bring in more work, and it's a wonderful program. I think that Victorville should have it. I've been up here 9 years, and I've talked to a lot of people that used the PACE program, and they love it. You have your pros and cons, but 90% of everybody that's used the PACE program, they said they would recommend it to everybody that they know. And I think it's a shame that Victorville and Apple Valley doesn't have that program, and I think we should bring it back and help us fix our homes. And like I said, we don't have a lot of money to put out thousands and thousands at one time, and we have people that really need the program. And it gives us the ability to fix our homes. I know it's based on the equity of your home. We know how the program works, but it's a wonderful program, and we really do need it. So help us help ourselves with the program, so we could fix our homes and make Victorville a really nice place. People show off their homes and stuff. Homeowners, the pride of ownership. That's it.
Thank you. After Cecil will be Bob Schuman.
Mayor and Council, thank you for taking a minute. My name is Cecil Volch. I'm a real estate broker here in the High Desert. And obviously there's a few concerns that are, as an association of realtors, as well as an individual broker, that I have about this program. And first of all, the most important thing initially is that the bonds that are sold and the lien that's placed on the house steps in front of any other mortgage that's already there. So if I'm a banker or an investor and I have a first position mortgage on my house, somebody comes along later without checking with the original lender and steps in front of them. So if something bad happens, and we all know that the economy can change, there has been adjustments in the market, and there will be again. We're enjoying a good time right now, but those valuations are not going to stay necessarily there forever. And if that happens, the original mortgager now steps behind whatever loan has been put on this property in the form of a bond, and the government's collecting the money with the taxes. So that's a big concern. Some houses that are another concern is that the rates for these bonds have been consistently higher than market mortgage rates. And I know there's been some revisions in the new law that indicates that there's some safeguards in there. But one of the things that really bothers me is that they're using an automated evaluation model. Now, if that was a very accurate way of doing it, every mortgage company would certainly use an automated mortgage valuation model. No, they require a full appraisal. Somebody comes out, looks at the condition of the property inside and out, and actually does comparables and produces a report that costs somewhere around $500 to send to the bank. That's to protect the investors at the bank. And so that's that. If you're using those automated valuation models, can be off by $30,000, $40,000, and people get them online all the time, and then they come and ask what they think their house is worth, way different than what it's really worth. So that's a big concern. One of the other things that is a concern is these are constantly sold as these huge energy savings, and it's been very. I don't know of any documented scientific studies that have been done and provided on individual homes. Every home's different, and there's no way of projecting the savings that they're asserting that they're going to be getting. And that's another problem, is the assertions that these things are going to add value to the properties. They simply don't. And many, many times, I don't know any lender that will finance a property that has one of these liens on it, because they're going into the deal in second place. And no lender wants to loan and be in second place. Thank you.
Thank you so much. After Bob will be Jeff Simonati.
My name is Bob Schuman. I'm a Vice President of Policy and Government Relations with Counterpoint Energy Solutions. We're part of the CSCDA Open PACE program. And I had some brilliant things to say to you, but I want to address the prior two speakers because I think there needs to be some clarification. The PACE loan is a loan on the house, so it does come in front of the first mortgage. But it's on the property tax bill. If something were to happen in a negative way, if the home were foreclosed on by the mortgage holder, something like that, no PACE company has ever foreclosed, by the way. All that has to be repaid is just like the property taxes, only the arrearages. The whole thing doesn't have to be paid off. So that gets blown out of proportion a little bit. He was talking about the full appraisal and all that kind of thing. Well, that's on a first mortgage. When you're going to do a home improvement, and let me just give you an example. Let's say it's August here, it's 100 degrees, your HVAC system goes down, you don't have air conditioning. What are your options for paying? That's about a $12,000 item, right? So if you've got the cash, God bless you, pay cash. If you have a high-level mortgage credit card, and you can put it on your credit card, put it on a credit card. Anything after that, you're borrowing money from somebody. You can go out and try and get a consumer loan. You may or may not get it. You can do a home equity line of credit, which realtors tend to like. The problem with those is it takes a very long time to get them, as you know, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get it even if you have good credit and all those kind of things. And he talked a little bit about interest rates. I looked today before I came. The home equity line of credit for the very highest credit-worthy people at Bank of America is 6.11%. Ours is 5.99%, regardless of term. So the interest rate argument doesn't really carry a lot of water anymore. But the first speaker, I think she hit it on the head. PACE is just one more option for homeowners. It's not for everybody. And you check down the list of how I'm going to pay for this home improvement that I have to have or that I want to make. I really believe that, American adults that own a home are going to make the financial decision that's in their own financial best interest. And so I think offering PACE to them as one more option, one more thing in the financial stack, if you will, is good policy. Thank you.
Thank you. After Jeff will be Destin Raleigh.
Good evening, Mayor Garcia and members of the council. My name is Jeff Simonetti. I'm speaking on behalf of Renew Financial this evening and the PACE industry, and I want to urge your support of the PACE resolution this evening. First, I wanted to thank Janelle Davidson for all of her help setting up staff meetings and working through the resolution. She's been very helpful in this process, and we appreciate her assistance. As you probably read in the City Council packet, the agenda packet, the PACE industry first brought this resolution before the City Council in 2015. And at that point, the Realtors Association expressed some concerns, in particular to the lien items as well as consumer protections. Our last speaker addressed the interest rates and the lien items, I think, in particular, and I wanted to go a little bit more into the specifics about the consumer protections that have been put in place since that time. There have been three items in particular in terms of state statutes that have been passed since then that specifically address many of the consumer protection concerns that the Realtor Association has. First, we have AB 2693, which was passed last year. It requires, as Jonathan mentioned, a financial disclosure summary and a know before you owe form so that consumers are aware of all of the items that have to be addressed in terms of financing and your terms and your interest rates, so they know that up front. In addition, Senate Bill 242, which has also been passed, now requires to have a live and recorded phone call, again, to review the loan terms with consumers before they purchase and get into that contract. Finally, which has just been passed through the Senate and the Assembly, and is now on the governor's desk, which is AB 1284, which requires, in addition to assessing the equity position in a home, we'll now have to take a more holistic approach to looking at a consumer's total credit history before they are able to move forward on a contract and to get into a PACE loan. So there really have been a lot of strides taken in terms of consumer protections that I think we have addressed significantly many of the concerns that the Realtors Association has put in place, and we're urging your vote and passage for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. After Dustin Raleigh will be Bob Harriman.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Dustin Rylick. I am the Senior Director of Market Development for Renovate America. I've provided you a little brochure. I guess the key thing here is that there's been so many changes along the lines of PACE, and PACE has had its issues and some concerns in the past. As many of the speakers before me have already addressed many of these concerns, a couple of things that I really wanted to hit on is the current legislation that's being put into place. And that's what this pamphlet that's before you is all about. AB 1284, SB 242, making sure that those consumer protections are taken to a higher degree. At the same time, AVM, which is an automated valuation modeling system, is something that's also being embraced in the mortgage world. Fannie and Freddie are actually utilizing it on refinances now as well. So it is a form of a appraisal that is definitely being used throughout the nation now. And one of the things that was put into this legislation was making sure that those automated valuation models are at the best degree possible to make sure that there isn't the variance that Cecil spoke about. So a lot of these things that are being put into place are very strong. Consumers need to know what it is that is being disclosed to them, number one. So that was under AB 2693. Number two, the live confirmed calls is key. With our company, it's taking close to 20 minutes per transaction to make sure that the homeowner understands every term of that agreement. A couple other things that we've done with our program is we've actually changed our rates. So we actually have contractors that are offering rates on a 5-year starting at 2.99%. So those rates have come down in the marketplace to where we have things that are available in the marketplace to create a competitive marketplace. And that's why your staff did a great job. Once again, Janelle, thank you for all of the hard work. She put in so much time looking through and sifting through all of the information given to her by all sides on this matter. One of the other things that I really want to make clear is the opponents of PACE, which is just the realtors, they're looking at it from one side, and they're saying that it's making it very difficult to be able to sell a property. And they're saying it makes it really difficult because of the fact that you have to pay this off before you can actually sell the house. That's not true. It's paid off out of a person's proceeds. So simply, just like a HELOC, just like a second, just like anything else that may be associated with your property, when you sell your property, you're going to likely have to pay it off. And that's why those disclosures are so important and made very upfront to homeowners these days. I thank you very much for your time, and I truly, truly hope that you'll decide to make PACE available as a voluntary option for your homeowners. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, I'm sorry, I think you're on 9, and this is D2. Did you want to wait until D9? Bob? Okay, that was the last of the cards that I had on item D2.
Madam Mayor, I have just a piece of information I'd like to pass on to the council, and you decide what you want to do with it. As you know, I'm the Victorville representative on the County Transportation Authority, and it's now a combination entity. It used to be Sandbag, now it's the Transportation CTA, plus there's the Council of Governments, and I can't say too much because of how this matter was discussed, but I want to say that there were some concerns in that organization about what they call down there the HERO program. May or may not be the same. I think they're similar. I would like to be able to, they have actual experience with it, and I'd like to be able to talk to them and find out what that experience is and if it's anything should take into consideration. So all I'm asking is that we play this.
I agree. Okay.
Question, Mr. Mayor? Yes, I'm not opposed to the program. I think that I need more information. I'll tell you why. I was directly involved with an individual who had a solar panel on the roof, and the finance company would not, they required it to be paid off in order to transfer title. That individual went to 4 of the financing companies, and none would accept that, and so they didn't get paid off escrow. They had to come up with half the amount of money to pay it off. I'm still, I guess the only reason that the city's involved is because this is really a loan company. Because they can go to the bank and pay for it now. I know 2 parties who put it on their roof, didn't bother with anyone. They simply put it on and financed it themselves. One paid cash. Not everybody has cash, but the one person did take a second loan on the house, used it to renovate the house and put in dual glass and the roof. So for this program to work, it's a limited number of people. And it may be just one more option, but the city's putting its name on it. The reason I want more information, although I think it has the potential of having a very good program, I want to find out why the sandbag, old sandbag, transportation decided to get out of it. I want to know why the real estate industry is still opposed to it. They've come a long way, but they're still opposed to it, my understanding, as of 2 o'clock today when I had my discussion. And if the city's going to lend its name to it, I don't want people to run into a problem and call the city and say, oh, we don't have anything to do with it. One of the things that happened under the old program is you got a call wanting to do an energy assessment. We're working with the county. I want a penalty if they say they're working with the city or they're working under a city-approved program, because it's not true. And I know I've heard of several people who bought into the program because they thought the county was backing it and would be responsible if they run into problems. They ran into the problems. Sandbag said, we're not responsible. County said, they're not responsible. The company that put it up, we're not responsible. And they had no place to turn to. We're going to lend our name to it. We have to take the responsibility. And so I agree. We need further discussion. Not opposed to it. I think that whatever problems there are that can be worked out, but I'm just not prepared tonight to vote.
Substitute motion, I would ask that we have a timeline, whether it's 30, 60, or 90 days, so that it gets on the agenda rather than getting lost in the mix and never coming back. I've had that experience with many items, so I'm going to make that substitute motion that Kennedy had to add a timeline if we're going to wait 30, 60, or 90 days to bring it back to the agenda and have further discussion.
Well, I don't know that you made a motion, so that would be a motion. Do you want some discussion on the 30, 60, 90, or?
Well, I'd like to not forget about it. I like
Right.
to, do we need 2 months? Do we need 3 months?
That'd be helpful for staff, I think, if they knew when you want to consider it again. Do you want to consider it perhaps in 1 month would be 2 meetings from now, 2 months would be essentially 4 meetings from now, the second meeting in November, so you could designate a meeting when you want it to come back.
You can always put a limit not to exceed, and that way
That's
it's
true.
guaranteed it'll come back.
Yeah, say not to
sometime.
exceed 90 days. We want to amend your motion to say that this comes back before the council within 90 days.
Not to exceed 90 days, that works.
All right, so there's a motion. Second?
Second.
Can I ask for a clarification? It sounded like Mr. Kennedy was going to do some research. I wasn't sure what staff is being directed to do at this point, other than bring it back when Mr. Kennedy has completed his research.
Well, I'm going
There's
to
more
be-
to that, as I guess is my question.
If I might, I have questions. I'm simply going to forward to staff to look into it. Doesn't take a lot of, in fact, a couple of phone calls. You should be able to find out. But in regard to you don't have to clear this when you transfer the property. You know, I've owned a bunch of houses and sold a bunch of houses and financed a bunch of houses, and I haven't found a lender yet that doesn't require that to be cleared. So, question from the lenders. Top 4 or 5 and make a phone call.
We have a CTA meeting tomorrow morning. I'll talk to the executive director. I will ask him to be in touch with you, and you can take it from there. I'm not going to try and do the research on it. That's
fine.
You're here doing what you do, and I'm not there doing what you do.
You got it. I just wanted to make sure we all knew our roles.
So I understand there's a motion from Councilmember Gomez to bring this item back within 90 days. Carolee, you have a second?
I do not have a second. Kennedy is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Motion carries with Councilmember Negretti absent.
Item D3, annual purchase order request for Mojave Water Agency for regional recharge and recovery water deliveries. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
The recommendation is that the Water District Board of Directors approve the annual purchase order request for MWA for R-Cube water deliveries for a not-to-exceed amount of $1,102,500 for fiscal year 2017-2018.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Just kind of not a question or I would like to see when these are annual, but possibly next year list the last 5 years to see what the increase have been. That's all.
Have a motion?
I move approval.
Second? Oh.
Go ahead.
Motion by Mr. Cox, second by Mr. Kennedy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Motion carries with Councilmember Negretti absent.
Item D4, annual purchase order request for Mojave Water Agency deliveries for High Desert Power Project. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
Recommendation is that the Victorville Water District Board of Directors approve the annual purchase order requests for MWA for water deliveries and storage for HDPP for an amount not to exceed $1,585,000 for fiscal year 2017-2018.
Questions or discussion?
For clarification for everybody, this is something we've been doing since the old days. The Water District, Water District buys the water from MWA and sells it to HDTP, the power project. It's just a pass-through transaction, but we need the purchase order authority. I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Ms. Garcia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Motion carries with Councilmember Negretti absent.
Item D5, settlement agreement entered between the City of Victorville and BV Victorville 3371, BV Victorville 3372, and BV Victorville 3373. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
The recommendation is that the City Council approve the settlement agreement and further allow the City Manager and City Attorney to make requisite changes as approved by the City Manager and City Attorney if needed.
Any questions? Any comments? Not, I need a motion. Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Ms. Garcia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Motion carries with Councilmember Negretti absent.
D6, La Mesa Nisqually Interchange 404 permit compliance and mitigating site coordination. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
The recommendation is that the City Council approve the Consultant Professional Services Provider Agreement with WSP for the La Mesa Nisqually Interchange 404 permit compliance and mitigating site coordination in an amount not to exceed of $26,960 and authorize staff to make non-substantive revisions to the standard agreement if required to finalize execution.
Any questions or comments? Not, I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Cox, second by Mr. Kennedy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Motion carries with Councilmember Negretti absent.
D7, Bear Valley Road Bridge over BNSF Railroad, temporary construction easements. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
Recommendation is that the City Council ratify the approval of agreements in the amount of $95,058 for the grant of temporary construction easements required for 8 properties in the Bear Valley Road over BNSF Bridge project.
Questions, comments? None? Second?
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Ms. Garcia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Motion carries with Councilmember Negretti absent.
D8, Green Tree Boulevard Extension Project, purchase and sale agreements for Krikorian and Baker properties. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
The recommendation is that the City Council ratify the approval of purchase and sale agreements in the amount of $7,750 for the Krikorian, APN 3090-34103, and Baker, APN 3090-49102 and 3090-49103 properties for the Green Tree Boulevard Extension Project.
Any questions or comments? If not, I need a motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Mr. Cox. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Motion carries with Councilmember Negretti absent.
Item D9, public input and discussion regarding Measure K, citywide half-cent sales tax measure on the November 7th, 2017 ballot. The recommendation item is for public input and discussion only, and I do have one card, and that's Bob Harriman. Other one? Okay, thank you.
I just want to go through a couple things about the Measure K, which I am pro Measure K. With the rising crime rates in Victorville and our growing population, Victorville's need for public safety is greater than it's ever been. I've been here for 34 years. It's just not the same place anymore. The city's been unable to keep pace with the rising costs of providing firearm police services, and that's pretty easy to figure out. The population here just is in turbo boost again, and so we need to keep up, and there's just virtually no money there to do it, especially with the county raising the cost of the contract. I don't recall right here what the percentage is, but it's astronomical. The half cent equals about a half a penny per dollar. Or better than that, 50 cents for a $100 purchase. So I don't see that, taking anybody to the bank or, that's very affordable for anybody. If you don't like it, go purchase whatever you want in a different city. The tax would be shared by visitors when they stop for gas or shop in Victorville. And everybody reads the newspaper and sees how much happens on the Interstate 15. 395, I guess, applies to Victorville in a very small area. But when these people travel to and from Las Vegas or to and from Mammoth or whatever, and they get in car accidents, we pay for the service for the emergency services there, okay? So I'm looking for having a little share there, for that. And as one council member mentioned earlier, the Measure K is going to fund 10 new police officers, 15 firefighters. It's going to open station, I believe it's 315. And it's also going to add a second paramedic squad to respond to the increased medical calls we get. When the fire department responds, I bet it's a very smaller number that are fires rather than health issues. The funds through Measure K will be restricted from being used for anything other than public safety and cannot be diverted for any other services whatsoever. There's a big fallacy, There's a lot of misinformation being put out there that the money won't find its way to fund those things. So,
your time is up.
Anyways.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just to add a couple things. I was hoping this agenda item might actually stimulate some public discussion and some public interest. That's why it's on the agenda. If you want to get a fairly basic, fairly clear understanding of the choice that's in front of us, I would urge you to go read the piece I wrote for the Daily Press a couple of weeks ago. Go online, you can find it. I was extremely careful to not advocate. If somebody reads that I was advocating for the sales tax into that, that's their reading of the letter. But I was most concerned about making sure every voter understood that it was a choice. You're going to choose one or the other. Ballot issue isn't presented that way, but that's the fact. And that's really what we want people to understand, and then decide which way you want to go. I wish we had a little more interest, Bob.
I have one. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I have one more card, though. Maggie Martin.
Good evening again, Your Honor, Counsel. I'm probably not as eloquent as the gentleman that was speaking before me about it, but I'm going to tell you what. There's no other option. It's either this option. Well, there is another option. The other option being property owners, homeowners, hello, are going to pay a tax, an annual tax for that. Not people who rent, not people who rent rooms, the property owners themselves. I kind of like the fair division of, for everybody who benefits from it. We just don't have any other options. I'm going to tell you, the majority of the people in this room don't have a clue what the average day in the life of a deputy or a lieutenant is in any agency, much less here in San Bernardino County. One thing the gentleman said before me about the rising crime in Victorville, it's the HD, period. It's Southern California, period. Yes, is it rising up here? Yes, I'm very alarmed by it. And I'm going to tell you something. The bottom line is really simply this. I wouldn't care if you paid each one of these uniformed personnel $100,000 a year, and I'm talking before benefits. If I had the money, they're worth double. They're worth triple. I've been noticing in the last week or so, 40 King is up morning, noon, and night, sheriff's helicopter. Morning, noon, and night over the mall, over my neighborhood, scraping people off an assist for 395 fatalities, which happen a lot now. I've lived here 19 years. I do agree with the gentleman. I've seen a lot of change I'm not happy with. But, we do the best we can and we move forward. But I just, police in my neighborhood, police everywhere. I'm a big fan of seeing that. But what that indicates to me is we have problematic people living here. We do. I'm not like-minded with them. I'm like, let me do my business in peace, go in peace, leave me be. But we do not have a lot of people that have crawled out from whatever rock somewhere else and moved up here that I'm on that same page with. Anyway, enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the cards that I have.
Comment, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I want to clarify a couple of calls that came in the last couple of days in regard that there'll be money available for the police. Under the annexation to this county special fire district, there is no money available to the police under that. Under the half-cent sales tax, there's enough that's put in there that the city council said they would hire 10 policemen. Now, the statement that the money wouldn't go to the fire is a real misstatement of facts. It is restricted to how it's raised. It will not be siphoned off for the police or anything else. It's specifically as written. And so I hope people will read that and understand. The comment was just made that the renters won't pay. I'm not sure what the renters are going to do because I haven't talked to a lot of people. I have units, and you bet they're going to pay. I'm going to pass that right on to the renter. So, and I think everybody that's a homeowner will pay the $153 if it goes under the county. If they're renting, the renter will pay it. And why not? They'd be foolish not to. But this is really important. The half-cent sales tax is a fair way because the people who use it will pay. the vacant lot that's 60 by 120, the county assessment thing is not an opinion. It's not land-based. It's based on the assessment that they pay. There are no services that empty lot pays. So much information. We need a forum, please.
Okay, this item was only for discussion, so I will move on to public comments and city manager reports.
Haven't had public comment.
Sorry, yeah. For public comments, I do have cards. Daniel Polly, and after Daniel Polly will be Robert Harriman.
Polly, 11418 Scotch Pine Way. As you know, I've spoke here several times. This is my 6th time. I'm a veteran on disability. This is the 6th time begging you to help me. Negligence and personal injury by the city of Victorville, code enforcement, the city allowing property management to break laws and rights of renters and human life. Shame on you. Investigations. What a disappointment. I will not let you treat me, a veteran, like a piece of trash and put me in a bad situation. You have neglected to help me, profit over people. You might as well ask me to commit suicide instead of you putting me in the street, and to blame you and your council not responding to my proof of all allegations that are real, documented against all parties, proof of all crooked acts and negligence to help and solve these issues. A lawsuit. You allow a bully to bully a woman. You do nothing to clean your deserts. You do nothing to help a veteran. So don't act like you care about a veteran. Negligence, personal injury, uninhabitability, housing, and bad management and conduct. Thank you. I'm Daniel Polly, and I am upset about everything that's happened to me. You're putting me in the streets. It's very unfair. How am I supposed to find a place with $850 and lost almost everything that was been contaminated in that household and still have to stay there because I cannot afford to find another place? And this landlord and your property management of Caldwell Banker have done nothing but lie about everything that the state inspector has put on this paperwork. I've gave everybody proper paperwork to everything. I'm really fed up with everything, and this is really taken me down to a low. It's pushed me over the edge, and it's very sad to see that some people say they're going to help, and nothing has been done. 28 more days, I'll be homeless. Thank you.
Robert, did I call you?
Okay, a couple things. I want to finish what I was saying earlier. Is that okay? Okay. I want to clarify that the property tax, if the sales tax isn't passed, the property tax, $153 per lot, and that applies to Costco, Kmart, the Mall of Victor Valley. Can you imagine that? Mall of Victor Valley, $153? That's insane. Okay. Now I'm going to get to the pathetic performance of our councilwoman. Okay. Obviously, she wants to reform the handbook and the municipal code to accommodate her agenda. Okay? All right. Secondly, she says she wants to go to events if nobody else goes. I think I saw you at an event with a City of Victorville shirt on that was for sanctuary cities. All right? Now, the conduct, nothing goes smooth in here when she acts like that. When she's told to be quiet, she doesn't be quiet. She's not quiet. She doesn't follow the rules. She will sit there and complain that she's left out. And when she acts and conducts herself like that, I wonder why. All right? Now, you stated every one of your the pieces that you brought up, half the time you just wanted to say that. You weren't even putting anything forward. And then, I just think that the disarray in here, when you do that, is shameful. It makes our city look bad. And lastly, it's got to end. When she when she says you're quiet, you complain about everybody else, but it's okay for you to ramble on. That's wrong. I got to see that end, or I'm going to be writing into the newspaper. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other cards for public comment. Therefore, we will be moving on to manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I know we had one public speaker, the first one who was very upset. I need to make the council aware that our code enforcement official has met with him, has met with Coldwell Banker, spoken with both of them in an attempt to resolve the situation. Ultimately, it is a civil matter between himself and his landlord, and a disagreement that we've done what the city has done what the city can, but ultimately, if he wants to pursue it, it would be a legal action on his part against the manager, really, or his actual landlord. So the city can't get in the middle of that civil matter, unfortunately. So we have heard him out. We have talked with Coldwell Banker and done everything that's possible from the city side. So as far as upcoming events, I'm only going to mention one. It's this weekend. It's the premier event in the High Desert, our fall festival. We expanded it to Friday night, 7 p.m. Fat Cat Swinger will be putting on a concert and then picking it up in the morning from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. There will be tens of thousands of people right here on Civic Drive enjoying themselves. I invite you all to come out and experience it. I would suggest, even though the concert starts at 6 o'clock, we have some other activities that are starting around 5 o'clock that are going to be fun as well. So I would urge you to come out to that. I know the whole council will be there. I'll be there. Bring a hat. Hopefully it's beautiful weather, Christian. I'll order that up. Thank
you. Okay. Thank you. And now we move on to discussion and possible action regarding items for the upcoming city council agenda. Start with,
I do have one item, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
In the past, I think there's been a very solid assumption that we have a half-cent sales tax issue. If that fails, in all probability, we would annex into the county special district. One of the issues that's been coming up lately is a now understanding by the public that if we go to the county, they take all the assets of the fire department plus $9.5 million a year, plus the growth, plus $153 a year, and this council no longer has any control whatsoever. We lose local control. I'm kind of surprised that I got more of an anti-reaction against that item alone, because individuals who have a complaint want to go to a body and complain, and that's this elected council. They lose that. And there is one other item that we haven't spent a lot of time on, and that's the establishment of our own fire department. I've recently been contacted by several ex-firefighters who are very interested in volunteering, call paid. If we want to do that, I don't want to wait until November 3 to have that discussion. I'd like staff to start preparing now, just in case.
That's something you want on a future agenda?
That'd be a future agenda item, next one, I hope.
Is there a consensus?
Yes.
Volunteer firefighters?
All right, somebody else? Discussion.
Is there a consensus?
Yes.
Just consensus. This is for future agenda items. Typically, we just do it by consensus. We could have a formal motion. Jim, would you like to make a motion to that effect?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Cox, second by Mr. Kennedy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries with Councilmember Gomez opposed and Eric Negretti absent.
Thomas, you have anything?
Oh, not for adding something to the agenda, no.
Adding
No.
on to the agenda. We move on to E4, reports from council members. I'll start with Ms. Gomez.
So this afternoon, as I was coming here, I knew that there was an agenda item, censorship. So it wasn't about a policy manual or anything like that. So I prepared myself, as you saw. And when I was driving up, I saw a young little baby, 2-year-old of color. And I said to myself, I represent you. And then the second drive, as I was coming up towards La Paz, I saw a homeless, disheveled woman with a sign that she could barely hold up, crossing IHOP. I looked at her, and in my thoughts, I knew I represented her. And I said to myself in a whisper, I represent her too. She just doesn't know it. And then the third encounter, as I was going up the freeway, I saw a young male with a backpack as big as he was, hunchbacked over, barely making each step as he went up that freeway pass. And again, I whispered to myself, I represent you, you just don't know it. So when I came here and we talked about the policy manual, that's where the energy came from. A lot of you may not agree with me, but a lot of people do agree with me. And I'm here to represent those people that don't know. I'm representing them as well as those that do and those that disagree. The next thing is, on the 21st annual Veterans event, the 21st annual Veterans event will be held November 11th. If there are any veterans in the city of Victorville, the city of Victorville welcomes you to come in and fill out a form online by October 15th. If you know of any veterans that have lived in the city of Victorville at any point, please pass on this information. I think it's important that we get more than 84 veterans that we represent like we did last year. We should at least double that amount. So please share that. And then lastly, I don't know what the involvement was with Mr. Pauly and how the city has helped. Is that something? I'm just looking for helping this male if we can in any way. But you said something about helping but not being able to. So how's the city involved in that?
Well, the city really can't get involved. It really is a civil matter. He has a dispute with his landlord. But based on his comments at the last meeting, our code enforcement official spoke to him and spoke with Coldwell Banker in some sort of attempt to bring them together. I can share more about that privately. I don't want to get into his private business on the mic.
Thank you. That was it for my comments.
No? Okay, very good. So there's no other items before the council. This meeting is adjourned.